I worked for the port from 95
Yeah.
to
How you doing? You got your lunch there?
Got my snack.
We're sitting there. Remember, Jessica's there.
I guess I want my stuff here,
So
actually.
you got you okay. So Jessica. I still got your health first thing.
Yeah, and
Set expectations, right?
but I think we'll skip it and go into paperwork.
Dawson, my leg's still hurting.
Your holiday.
We're painting at my house, so it's been pretty well. How was yours?
Also nice, our daughter came home Christmas Eve and. Yeah, things went fine, except that at the airport, she went to buy a sandwich and then she gave it 20 and they found it was counterfeit, so she had to do. It was tip money she had from her job. So I mean, they just took it and kept it, but he was like, really, I'm not trying to pull a fast one on you. This is like tip money.
Was it counterfeit though?
It was, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was, because they did the whole. Anyway, so it was a counterfeit bill. Other than that, it went fine.
I was just gonna show you this is our big zippers throwing 20s around and
Okay, call this council special work session, council special session to order. It's Wednesday, December 29th, time is 4 p.m. And I'm gonna have John kind of explain what happened with our agenda here a little bit before we get started.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So we're having a special meeting, and this special session is kind of a limited meeting, and it has two items on the agenda. One is the passage of resolution 1946, which is the sale of property on 10th Street. And that resolution declares property surplus and also authorizes the sale of the property and signature of the city administrator. What's prerequisite to that resolution should be what's on the 6 o'clock agenda is the public hearing for that meeting. We'd have the opportunity to do the same thing through a public hearing. The public has a comment with all the ORS statutes as far as the things it needs to have. Appraisal and notice and advertising, and we have all those things, title report, all that stuff is done. So we're asking that the special session be continued until at least 6 o'clock so we can have the public hearing, because public hearings are time certain. And then right after that, we can go ahead and approve the resolution. And my apologies that didn't catch that last week. Would have been easier just to have a public hearing right now. We'll move into the meeting and kind of go through that, but that did not happen. So setting expectations for today, I'm really hopeful that staff has been looking for direction from council on what they want out of the tourism program. And it's my sincere hope that we get some constructive feedback with that. And part of that, I wanted to just quickly review the agenda, some really changing kinds of things. First of all, Sykes graciously agreed to facilitate just a discussion about tourism and goals and things of that nature, what are strengths and weaknesses, that kind of thing. Those that you don't know, Sykes, he's a long career around Columbia County. He's been held just about every seat from port commissioner to port. County commissioner, port. Yes, maybe one manager. City managers of Vernonia, Scappoose, and Forest Grove. Forest Grove is in Columbia County, but
And now
anyway, he's now with the PUD, and has a long career of doing these kinds of community engagement exercises. And help facilitate, have a third party person walk us through that. And Other item agendas, items 3 and 4, which is this tourism staff recommendations, and Q&A, and then the various business models we proposed to you in the past. Peter Hicks is going to jump in on that if we give him 10-minute warning. I'll walk through the draft contract and let you know what things are okay to be in there. He's modified the agreement to that he feels like we're in a place where the city is covered as far as third-party contractor expectations. So, and then after that, opportunity for next steps. We'll also have Tina Curry's in the audience to talk, and was willing to give a year-end report on tourism and the finances and that. And then, you know, whatever discussion I'll have after that, if that works. Then next steps. We have a tourism contract that is expiring at the end of this calendar year. Decide, you know, is it broke? Can we fix it? You know, if it needs fixing, how do we fix it?
All right, well, so I guess we'll go ahead and have Mike start with the SWOT. You're familiar with these, very familiar with these.
Oh, yeah.
And you can lower your mask.
Yes,
Yeah.
you might be able to understand what
Yeah.
First of all, thanks for the opportunity here. I'm kind of excited about this because I remember back in the day, I actually worked in this building, and there was a city manager that said, you know, it'd be really cool if St. Helens could do something with the waterfront. There was all a bunch of logs there. And of course, that didn't be very good favor from the powers that be, because this was Boise's town at that time, and that was where they stored their logs. And how dare you talk about doing something else here? So about a year later, that guy was gone, and yeah, got rid of those radical ideas way back then. But anyway, so I've watched for a long time as St. Helens has progressed. I really think personally St. Helens was probably one of the most spectacular waterfronts in Oregon. And I'm really excited about what you guys have done. It's been fun to watch progressive improvement for your parks. And we'll go after grants, which you've done out of Campbell is really good. And waterfront anyway, some big fan of yours. And at PUD, we've kind of recognized what a great opportunity is there, and have really enjoyed partnering with the city and partner in the future and stuff. But I didn't come here to tell you all that stuff. I just want to give you a little background.
You're doing your job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, in the past, I think PUD's philosophy was, well, let's just provide power, okay? Provide power. And what I've to help them understand is that we have about 20,000 meters, which about 40,000 customers. And we have 9 customers that are the industrial customers that pay 25% of our power bills. So it's important for us to kind of try to help them be successful, and also to attract new industry, because it's a good business model for us. If we can bring those folks in, then we're not going to have to raise rates for other folks. And so it's kind of and we're actually in the midst of developing a grant program to try and help businesses be successful and grow and use more power and create more jobs. So just a side note. But
So one question for you. Our representative Jake Carter is resigning.
yes,
Is that going to be appointed, or is that going to be up for election? How's that going to work?
I'm going to talk to you after the meeting.
Okay.
Actually, we'll declare the vacancy at the January meeting, his last meeting. That'll be his last meeting. It'll become open on the 1st of February, and we'll advertise in February. And then at the March meeting, they'll interview and select a replacement. So that's how that process will go. And of course, it's the St. Helens seat.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Each seat is different, but yeah, Jake, his the job up in Grace Harbor. So anyway. That'll be how that works. Have you, I think most of you probably been involved with strategic planning, SWOT analysis stuff in the past.
Yep, just did that a few weeks ago.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did it right here.
Yeah, gosh,
Rachel facilitated for us. Yeah.
she did a good job.
More general to the.
That was writing stuff down.
Well, I've always found strategic planning to be critical. It helps get everybody on the same page, and it really gives you an opportunity to have everybody have a voice. It really kind of help you figure out where your opportunities lie and some of the challenges that you face. So it's not a complicated process. But what I have found in all of my jobs is it's really critical part of developing goals for the organization. And the other thing is where it gives the staff direction to really kind of help be a part of that direction and focus where they think strategic resources should be applied. So anyway, the way I like to do this is, we'll start talk about strengths. We're gonna be talking about, of course, tourism. And I want to talk a little bit, kind of get everybody's feedback as far as what you think the mission of tourism is. And just ask each person to answer that question. But what we'll do is we're going to open it up and we're going to ask you for your feedback, and I'm going to write it up on the board. And the thing I want to stress is that there's no bad ideas. And if you have a thought, it goes on the board, and at the end of the process, we'll figure out what our priorities are and see if there's some strategic actions that we might want to focus on that will help us really help the city kind of examine where you've been in tourism, but more importantly, where you want to go, how you want to get there. So hopefully this will be worthwhile for all of you. And so I guess I'll just open up and ask each of you, what do you think the mission of the city is for tourism?
I'll start it off, and I'll be true to the mission that I've been tried to be true to in every decision that I've made since I've been on the council. And that would be the second sentence there, second paragraph: provide a safe and healthy environment within a sound economic framework. And that means bring an economy to this city that can replace what the mills have been doing. And not replace, but enhance and continue to grow in a sustainable way. I see that as a good sound goal to help our economy come along. The council was amiss just kind of when the mill shut down and we had no buyers on that waterfront property. It sat there for sale nationwide, and I think one or two companies took a look at it, no takers. And so the city decided at that time to purchase that property for $3 million from Boise Veneer. And we are now, and we went to work trying to involve our public, which I think we did very effectively, into what their vision was for the riverfront development. And we listened, and what we have now thus far is from public opinion. And I think we are in a good start, but it's getting to be more than a concept at this point. It's starting to get into planning and shovel-ready kinds of processes as we're moving forward. So that's it for me. It's a sound economic framework.
Very good.
So I'll go ahead and,
You want to describe?
That would be nice. Is somebody that's got better handwriting than mine?
anybody? Yeah, there we go. Not times you got good writing.
does he?
Well, he writes a little slanted.
Let's not start off.
We got less paper. Sound economic base, is that basically help create a sound economic base?
Base framework, however you want to say it. Sustainable.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Mayor.
So mine is, what tourism means to me is that, is fun events that draw in visitors and also, our locals are able to also enjoy as well.
Events.
Community events.
Yeah.
Warm fuzzy feeling events.
Others?
I think tourism should highlight St. Helens' strengths in order to attract people to our city.
So highlight attractions.
Some of our strengths, like our waterfront
Yeah.
and environmental stuff, and
Highlight strengths to attract tourists.
yeah, or attract people.
We'll call them tourists.
Yeah, I'm agree with what I'm hearing. And I would say something that kind of ties in the community events, attracts tourists, but works for the benefit of all. I think we have a strong events that go on and bring a lot of attention down this part of town. And it's not always so apparent what the benefit is to the larger community, other businesses that aren't down here and that type of thing. So tourism that can, and I think obviously most of the business will always take place down here with these events, but how can we enhance opportunities for other businesses to, so yeah, just tourism should benefit all the community.
Pass.
I have a different view of this. There are tourists out there looking for some place to go. They're going to the coast, they're going here and there.
Can you your mess?
Oh, okay. There are tourists all over the place looking for some place to go. And they go by here going to the coast. So I need a system that will give these people a reason to stop in and see what St. Helens is about. I have to realize also that the income that our mills gave, which was very heavyweight, can't be matched just by tourism. It's going to be a part of St. Helens. That's the first thing that I'm looking at this group of people. Now, the state unfortunately says a tourist has got to live more than 50 miles away from here to be considered a tourist, which screws up a lot of our thought patterns. Okay, now the question is, what do we have here that's really, that tourists would like to see? And one of the things that a lot of people would like to see is the Columbia River. And the way the area is set up, you can't see the river because most of it's private property behind industrial walls or something. We have an opportunity, at least you can look at the Columbia River.
We'll get the opportunities, but what I want you to describe is, what do you think tourism definition?
Well, that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
That's what I'm getting to.
No,
What I'm starting at is, who do I have to look at to see? I want to see what they want.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to give them something they're going to spend money on. Okay,
So tourism is a way to try and pull people off the highway and get.
yeah, or from wherever here. Okay. So I'm looking at who am I going to get money from? Now the question is, how do I do it? And the other thing is, how do I involve the whole town in doing this? Because if only 3 shops in the place get tourists and everybody else is left behind, it's not the way to go.
So you're looking for tourism that serves The entire community.
the entire community, and,
Benefits the entire.
and it's gonna be a 360-day operation.
Okay, fair enough.
And it's gonna be 100% of the city.
Okay.
And we have a tendency to look at events, and yet we don't look at the events of the river. Like, when are the salmon going that way?
We'll get there. We'll get headless.
Yeah, but it's an event, and we've talked about,
Right now, I just want your definition of what tourism is.
okay, well, so I'm trying to get people who don't live here who want to come here. Anything that fits that is tourism.
So it attracts people, makes people want to come to town.
Well, I don't care how we get them here, but they're a tourist.
Okay. Any other definitions of tourism that you want to put up here?
It might be valuable to do a little check-in on the tourism program goals that we have.
Why don't we
Right now to make sure that they're.
Why don't we review those right now? You have those?
I do.
Did you read those?
So this is what we've been working with, and some of this comes out of the 2007 animal tourism plan that we've adopted, and that, they talk about developing a hook and understanding a visitor interests and, getting, what's it take to get people there, and living in this competitive world of, this is a competitive business, trying to get people to come to your community. So the first goal was to attract visitors to the St. Helens community. That seems like a square, solid goal. Supporting local businesses and nonprofit organizations, support our community, local business communities and service organizations. And the 2007 plan also talks about elevating the image of St. Helens to the outside region, because we're in that competitive, space. And then to develop a program that operates sustainable, is ideally not exceeding expenditures. Most tourism organizations, travel organ including, just to get the hotel tax, they spend the hotel tax. There's not really any expectation of direct return on it. It's all indirect return by supporting other businesses and things. Our program is pointing out it's doing a little better than that. So. And then just leveraging the that local transient lodging dollar tax to bring more than $1 back in investment, whether that's direct investment to the city or if it's to the nonprofits or local businesses or all other places it comes out.
So do you think that we captured some of the same principles up here?
I think the community events, yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the hook right there. The 13 nights, everybody knows 13 nights every Thursday night. You can look it up. You get people here from Scappoose all over the place. Halloween Town, of course.
Okay, let's jump on that. People from Scappoose, they're not counted as tourists because the rules were 50 miles away. They do bring their money. So that's what, the other thing is we have you've just mentioned very definite programs, which are not wrong, but we gotta be larger than a few definite programs.
I want to back up and question what you're saying about 50 miles away. I don't know where you read that, and but it does not apply to our framework.
That might be something Oregon tourism.
Somebody else.
Yeah, but that's right. That's
That isn't ours.
It's the state's definition. Yeah.
So let's let Mike facilitate this SWAT. There's actually a rhyme and reason to these SWATs.
Okay, we'll get there.
yeah, but part of that is the state helps advertise things in its Welcome to Oregon tourism.
Right.
And that's where some of the definition, we get caught with some of their definitions.
Yeah.
And we have to face it, we got problems and they may cause some of them.
I try to ignore what goes on in Salem as much as I can.
I know, they ignore it too, so it doesn't, but that's one of the things that hurts us, where they would help us on some things. They jump in with some of these funny rules that they made.
But the nice thing is I think you've done pretty well. Just like that, I think you've done pretty well. So what I really think we want to make sure is everybody's understands kind of what the mission or the principles are for tourism. And it seems what I'm hearing is that you guys really want to make St. Helens someplace and develop your attractions so that you can bring people here, have events, so they going to want to come here and try to pull them up the highway. You know, in essence, that's kind of the two pieces that I heard. And you want to do it because you recognize that if tourists come here, they might buy a home here, might bring their business here. I think one of my favorite sayings, gosh, this is old. I think everybody remembers Governor Goldschmidt. Created this thing called the Oregon Tourism Alliance, and there was 8 counties that were part of it. And Columbia County was one of them. That's how we got Prescott Beach funded. And then some other docks out in front of the courthouse. That's where the money comes. But anyway, he had this saying that I never forgot that was really significant. He said that in Bend, there were 70 companies located there that first came there as tourists. And I think that's kind of what you guys are saying today. You know, a lot of people just go through town here. We got a wonderful waterfront, we have some nice attractions. And if we can get folks to come here, they might bring their business here and their family here. And tourism really is a part of that. You know, it's one of the legs of a good tourism for economic development program. So anyway.
So I think one thing, I think Capture, and I think Steve brought this toward the end, that tourism 365 year round. We're going to have, so that should be a year round event. Obviously, we're going to have our big events that are going to spike, but there may be people, including some folks who are interested in investing in our community, who will not be attracted by those events, but they might be coming to St. Helens just to check out St. Helens, and coming then, so that when we got our river walk, we'll be coming down there. So 365, that there's some kind of ongoing, sustained, obviously lower key, but something that can try to bring in even a trickle of people throughout the year.
Does that capture it?
Yeah. Well, no, I wouldn't say year-round events. I mean, it's even just making people aware, maybe even making people aware that down here we've got several brew pubs. Come to St. Helens and do the brew pub tour, or come to see our parks.
It was at one time through our chamber that we had a visitors bureau or a visitors center, and that's kind of finished. And you're saying bring those things back.
So it's not, so it's not events. We're not going to have a bird watching festival.
Hands down, Kathy's.
We're not going to have a, sorry.
We're going to go ahead and jump.
Okay, I'm gonna play with that word events in the 360. I just got yelled at for people looking at the river and going salmon fishing. That's an event, or is that something? That's something that's always happening here. I just want to make sure we have a very large definition of event.
So highlight strengths to attract tourists. That kind of gets that, don't you think?
Yeah, well, no, because in the conversation, we've mentioned the 13 nights and other things, which gets to be very specific. I want to make sure it's very, very broad.
Well, let's get there.
Okay, that's one of the things in our short conversations we're getting caught on.
Sure. Well, that's okay. This is a good conversation. I think
we're talking about a tourism program, excuse me. But really, the events piece of it is a strategy. It's not.
It's not the program.
It's not, and that is our program. That's all we have, right? It's a thing, but tourism is bigger than that.
No, I'm going to go ahead and shift gears. I think I've got a pretty good sense of what tourism means to all of you. And I think it's captured here. We can maybe refine it, but I think that we have a pretty good sense that what was in the plan in 2007 really was good direction, and you've come a long way on that plan. So given that, any plan needs to be updated. The best way to do it is to go through a swap process. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to ask you guys for your ideas. We're going to start by talking about the strengths. What are St. Helens' strengths as far as tourism goes? What do we have here or that we're doing that is a strength as far as tourism and promoting tourism for the city of St. Helens. And what I want to just remind everyone is, throw out your ideas, we're gonna write them down, and it's really not something to debate. Everybody's ideas are their ideas, and they all count, they're all important. Put them all on board.
Greatest strength is the river
The river,
and the people.
the people, yeah, I'm gonna just go around the room and ask you, what do you see as,
Well, the ecological areas that we have brings out about bird watching, photography, all kinds of things for the parks for people to come and visit.
okay, so ecological areas, we're gonna put parentheses, birds.
Oh, you don't need to put that down, but just, we know what we're talking about, I think.
Okay, yours?
I'm gonna go back to the river, but I'd like to put activities on the river. I see 4 things that the river has to offer, totally different.
All I want's one. And you'll get your chance to put
Okay.
put there. Activities on the river.
Well, I'd say one is that we do have been working with a contractor with a lot, how many years? 5, 6, 9 now. Is it 9? So we do, I mean, we have a contractor who has worked with the community
Okay,
and
so you, how would you, just a contractor,
yeah, I mean, it's a contractor with experience,
existing.
Events, existing.
Contractor, is that what you want?
something like that.
Okay. How about you?
I'm gonna say Halloween Town. I
Halloween
mean, that is
town?
a big strength.
Okay, very good. How about you?
13 nights still.
13 nights. Put it up there. We go back to work, are we? 13 nights, how about, you got another?
Restaurants and foods.
Restaurants and food. And that's a strength that really beefed up over the last handful of years, I think. I've been real impressed with the improvement. Especially since I've been working at their island. Really.
We have the Elks with the River Parade and some of the nonprofits or organizations have large events.
So we have
And service groups.
strong service groups, slash events.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Do you have any other strengths in town? We got the river, we got the people.
Yeah, we, I'm sorry. When I remembered to pull my mask down, I forgot what I was going to. Well, it has to do with our disc golf course, our BMX track, our skateboard park that we have, what do you call those type?
New park system?
Recreational groups.
The what?
Recreational groups.
Well, the recreational group, what you call the,
Recreational activities.
whatever game.
Extracurricular activities.
we also have the county fairgrounds.
Okay. We'll give you give that to me here in a minute. I'm still waiting for. So you're saying you have good parks, variety, variety.
Well,
of
the good parts about that focus, no, what do you call, kids on not it's adults on skateboards get disc golf, they're called alternative sports, they're called. There's a phrase for it, and I'm showing my age.
X Games.
X Games, yes, there, we got, yes.
Can I write alternative sport?
So, yeah, sports, X game, whatever, yeah, so, Rick, that was actually,
Yes.
alternative
we
sports.
have some of that, here, we can do that.
Development opportunities.
Okay. Development opportunities.
Yeah.
Put that on a different sheet. Please.
Recently, we completed a countywide tourism plan, and that plan focuses really heavily on outdoor recreation, just kind of generally, paddling, the mass.
I think that's what Topaz was getting around to, 4 parts. So 4 parts it
Yeah,
is.
development opportunities.
Yep.
No, yeah, this is just part of our, no, it's just, this is strengths. And it is a strength, and it is an opportunity. Sometimes it could be more than one.
the river, as part of that, the plan, as part of that outdoor recreation thing, paddling was a big piece of that, and, you know,
So,
Sand Island, most of, you know.
so is that outdoor recreation, is that part of alternative?
I think outdoor recreation is different than like sports, like organized sports.
You guys want to-
Extreme sports.
I see a couple people that not
Recreation.
outdoor recreation opportunities. That's actually a big one.
Fishing, all of that.
I think, just being predictable every year, again, you know, the Halloween town, the 13 nights. The 4th of July is a big one. We've only missed one 4th of July. We have to, that has to be discussed at some point, because Heather did call me, just so this council knows, and John and.
So would you say regular community events? Regular community events, is that how you describe that? I'm trying to figure out how to.
Strength that we just have consistency. Consistency in some sort of 13 nights happens, 13 Thursdays every.
So can we call it consistent community events?
Yes.
And that was, when you see that, you think of Halloween Town.
Third Saturday of every month is the Kiwanis Parade of June.
Okay.
Third Saturday of every June.
Consistent community events, okay.
Kiwanis Parade, yeah.
Safety, not only a good sound police force, but a good framework with our public works with safe water and those amenities.
Okay.
Safety.
Safe community.
I mentioned the county fair, but we also have, I'm going back to the water again, and out of the kayaking area, we have hunting. Duck, geese hunting and fishing. That follows state rules and federal laws, back to consistency. But you can't shoot geese in the airport, but you can go in the back swamps and shoot geese there. That type of activity. So,
I mean, is that kind of outdoor recreation?
is hunting considered recreation? I mean, I know
Yeah.
playing tennis is,
For some people, it's recreation.
yeah,
As a hunter, yes.
Yeah. That kind of recreation.
but it's a different group of people.
I mean, I go fishing, which is outdoor recreation.
And there's a schedule to that too.
Yeah.
And the schedule of the river coming up and going down is we're having it now.
So you want to put fairgrounds up there? You mentioned that earlier. Is that-
Yes.
Okay. That is a big deal, actually. It's a real plus.
I have nothing additional to add.
Strong leadership.
Strong leadership.
Some of the things that Astoria has done over their years in developing their program, and they have 20-time full hotel receipts, is to develop a strategy about, Astoria for Astorians, is what they're saying. It's like, it's about our people first, and we're creating a place that people want to come to and be drawn to. And, they put a slogan to that, little pretty, little gritty, is kind of the, they've really done a really nice job. And they're to a point where it's almost on the other side of the curve where we're like, this is enough. We're, the cruise ships are coming and all the other things that happen there. And there's opportunities for cruise ships here too.
So what you're saying here with strong leadership is a real commitment to tourism by the
Yeah.
city.
Very passionate
By the-
people,
by the
even,
City council and
contracted
staff.
people, everybody's really passionate
Okay.
about tourism.
Strong leadership and commitment to.
Yeah.
Okay. You have another?
No, I'm good.
Sure.
I'm sure I could come up with one if I could really wanted to say
Why
it.
don't you think it's important? Put it back up there.
I've got 13 more.
Okay.
Cultural activities. Recently, in the last decade, for example, possibly the last 2 decades, the library has been the center of cultural activities that draws people from Portland as well as a surrounding community.
I would agree with Councilor Morton that we kind of dropped the ball on that cultural activities, Arts and Cultural Commission, and it went to Joan Youngberg, who did a few things with it, but that's definitely something that we need to revisit as a council. So that was just a side thing a little bit, but
So we got that up there. Do you have anything else?
We got stock car racing here.
Stock or racing? How about Sand Island, is it?
And that's huge.
Should that be up there as right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it feels like a whole nother world. It's not even a 5-minute boat ride.
Any other tourism recreation or tourism strengths? I think the proximity to Portland is a big strength. Come out here and spend the day and go home.
It's halfway to the coast.
And you do have a hotel motel tax, which is strength. And
I would go one step further and say that our development that we're doing on a riverfront is a tremendous strength to draw people here, even though it's a plan and a concept, people are excited about what that can bring.
so did we capture that with it? Is development opportunities,
Right.
sure, but should we
No,
on that call it river? I mean, do we want to be specific right here?
not specific,
From
all
a
over.
tourism standpoint?
What's weird is you say right here, and I hear the community, they get frustrated, but the draw for outsiders is the river. I mean, we can't stop that. I mean, you'd be foolish to not utilize that asset, and that's where people want to be. It's unfortunate that I hear a lot of, it's just unfortunate that about probably 90% of the events have always happened down here on the river.
So you're talking about how critical it is, you're talking about how critical it is in the riverfront, so I think most, everybody in this room understands, and basically, if you look at your plans,
Yes.
Right.
Riverfront development is almost standalone, don't you think?
We also have a gateway,
So I look at that,
a gateway plan as well. I mean, we've got a lot of planning, a lot of concepts for our entire city. It just isn't the riverfront. It's like we're kind of starting at that point. And I do believe that we've talked a lot about expanding, once we get that phase 1 done, through our transportation, plans and, through our development processes, I see an all-encompassing community.
anything else?
We got docks. And a lot of the tourists don't use the road, but they use their boats to come down the river to see us.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Somebody, something comes to mind that you failed to bring up that you think is important, we can still put it up, I think we're pretty much done with opportunities, but I think we'll go ahead and talk about weaknesses, so. So why don't we go ahead and open it up and what do you think our biggest weakness to promote tourism for the city is?
Gable Road.
Okay, so Gable Road. Access,
What was the question?
What's the weakness of getting the word out, so to speak,
promoting tourism
promoting tourism?
and what's, what is not working that if you could fix it would help enhance your,
I think one of our weaknesses is our business owners and citizens in the affected areas not knowing. Sometimes for doing a part of, even though we try to notify, that's our ability. And I don't know how you go about getting that.
so event communication.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
With locals,
with locals,
okay.
weakness.
Organizational workflow.
Organizational workflow, now, what's,
Something that we are actively working on, I feel like. So
so why don't you explain that a little bit better?
just like the workflow, I feel like tourism should be ran more like public works and other departments of the city, but I don't feel like it's quite there yet.
So organizational work.
Organizational development.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to cut you off.
So I'm thinking the workflow, like every program should have a workflow. Tourism is a program. Should have like a
Organizational work
workflow.
plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
really well developed work plan for tourism. And I feel like we're
Organizational
doing
work, how about if we go work/action plan?
Yeah.
Is that just what you said?
Yeah.
Weaknesses over here?
Our past history, the big ugly mills and what they've done to the river. We still have some bad history we've got to live down.
So vacant industrial sites.
And the fact they've done so much pollution, I mean, it's historic on the Columbia River, what we've done.
Like the Niedermeyer Martin site and Boise, not that way so much.
Like the Portland, they're trying to fix it. We haven't got a plan to fix ours yet.
Vacated industrial property. Slash decay, I think is what he's saying.
Talking about more about the environmental side of things or the, like the.
Both. I mean, it's a dead mill is a dead mill. I don't know if any of you guys went through Pittsburgh when steel mills were closing down, how terrible that town looked. It wasn't until they started doing something that Pittsburgh came back to life.
I think what you're saying is, for instance, the Niedermeyer Martin site could be a, you know, I know the Fort was talking about making that into potentially a boat ramp and some camping in there, but because of some of the environmental issues in the past history, you can't do that right now.
Right.
So that's, I think that's the point you're making.
And we need to work with the port specifically about that issue, because the port owns a lot of that land. We own a substantial portion as well, but we need to work with the port.
I think that's an opportunity. You should write that down, we have opportunities. You might- Seriously, it's a good point, but it's not a weakness.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
To a point, it has been.
So the weakness would be.
Working with outside agencies, help us out, partnerships.
Okay.
Partnerships and opportunities.
I was thinking that also with like other cities around us.
Not a weakness, or maybe it's both.
So,
Strengthen partnerships.
Please lower your mask when you're talking so Kathy can
so.
catch you.
The partner, we need to strengthen, but it's a weak right now, so it's,
He said strengthen partnerships.
but that's an opportunity. Weakness is, how about limited partnerships with key?
Lack of partnerships.
I would call it limited. Have them, but not strong.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. The, you know, not having a.
I feel like their dad, Kathy.
We could just ask about it too.
Well,
You know, organizations, I'll go back to Astoria again, they have strong partners that they can take their transient lodging fees and support. And then it's just a city writing a check to an organization that fulfills their mission. And, you know, St. Helens doesn't have that. Right? Frankly, there's no
so,
other body that's.
now would you call it, put the chamber in this group?
Patrick,
No, sorry.
he might have one.
Oh, I do.
I did.
Lack of hotels. Lack of hotels and motels, again, the lodging.
That's.
Limited availability of hotel motel lodging spaces. We could use a few more hotels.
No
motels.
places for people to
Bring
stay.
in more,
You know,
bring in more lodging tax.
I think most of us are really about 6 feet apart. If you would like to remove your mask, you can.
So,
Okay.
so you're saying limited lodging, how about like RV parks and that kind of stuff? Is that-
Yeah.
is that a weakness? Would you call out for that, or would it be separate, lodging / RV parking? Yes. Okay, both of them would kind of help you. bring-
Yeah, you're right.
You're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we talk about limited partnerships, I think we were talking about the port, but how about like the chamber?
So
Is that a weakness or?
Yes, yes, and I was gonna bring that up as a separate weakness is that, well, and I think the reason has been because the chamber has had fits and starts. It was on its way up, then COVID hit, it's starting again. And the same with our former Shedco, now our Main Street Alliance, where that's also gonna be, I think, an opportunity, but right now, I believe it is a weakness, is that we don't have we have some strong partner organizations like the Kiwanis clubs and others who provide that, but other organizations have not had the consistent capacity to enter into effective partnerships to
State level developing commissions, those kinds of things, the governor's office, so many kinds of governmental organizations we need to tie into, I think, more effectively. We were kind of there for a bit, but it got stalled big time.
So how would you put that up? How would you describe that 3 or 4 words? Partnerships with the state?
Municipal partnerships.
Another big weakness that we've been trying to address is being able to maintain our waterways and patrol our waterways, including Sand Island. That is a huge weakness, but we are actively working on it, but it's a big one.
Derelict boat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Derelict boat.
And Sand Island patrolling Sand Island.
D-boats.
That is indeed a weakness.
Yeah.
Promoting-
Probably our biggest right now.
D-boats is okay.
It's BOATE.
Poor guy, he's like, I'm never going to.
ECK.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, boats, yeah.
And patrolling Sand Island,
That's a good one, Jessica.
because we want to bring people to Sand Island.
We are currently working
to
on
get
it.
safe.
So we would call that, well, just enforcement,
Marine Patrol.
Safety on Sand Island.
okay, marine enforcement.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's in the water and,
Getting to the island is the problem.
We have that railroad problem. We can't advertise along the railroad Route 30 corridor, so people don't even know we're here.
how would you describe that, Steve?
Transportation issues,
Not so much
overpasses and
that,
that kind of
that's-
thing.
that's another
being
one.
Discussed.
But I'm talking about, I can't put signs up there and say, hey, St. Helens is 2 miles down the road, because it's sitting on the railroad property.
So advertisement restrictions.
Or, yeah, but it's
Um,
peculiar to the railroad system.
So. The signage on.
Switch yard? Switch yard, I guess we call it.
Signage along rail line,
Yeah.
and you can get that to work, it's not easy. Railroad's probably one of the most difficult groups I've ever met with, to work with,
God's the next one, they're one above that.
God's easier.
Takes a governor to do it.
But, no, seriously, we put signs up in St. Louis, but it was not easy, you gotta pay for them. And you gotta pay the railroad to mow their area so that it looks good when people come into your town. Another one of my pet peeves.
Yeah, we pay the state.
Yeah, we eliminated that. We're not paying anymore. So what other weaknesses we have? We've got signage, marine enforcement, derelict boats. How about resources? We've got plenty of resources to do all this stuff?
We don't have a community attitude, total community attitude to help. We're not a together community yet.
So lack of cohesion or lack of cohesion for tourism. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
even before, yeah, for the whole community, that there are towns with anything shows up, everybody's out in it. We're not. We're a segmented community still.
Yeah, I like resources. I do agree with maybe a little bit of lack of resources.
Okay, well, so lack of cohesion up there.
Mhm.
Or lack of shared vision? Is that better?
Yeah, that's a little more diplomatic, yeah.
Okay. And then Peter spell.
I got one.
So we're gonna go ahead and put resources in the limited resources up in the. And
I believe the reason for the lack of limited resources is with the mayor's broken record is 1.9 tax dollars per thousand. And so we have extreme economic inequity of income coming into the city so that we could develop those resources that come to us.
so you're saying,
Lack of economic funds.
lack of economic,
Well, we don't really have that though, as far as our tourism. I think we probably the only city that collects that. This last man collected
but you're talking about
the
the,
hotel tax.
no, I think you're the only one that has one in the county. But I think what you're saying is that one of the challenges, we have,
Yeah, the city has to do the infrastructure for that riverfront development. Okay, how are we going to do it?
we lost Boise, we lost Friesen, and we haven't replaced those. So, so what you're saying is limited resources and declining industrial base or
Yes,
I mean,
yes, exactly.
declining industrial base, because that's,
exactly,
tourism is not the only answer. It's a full prong of it's industrial development.
Exactly.
As you well know.
You realize, I mean, it used to be if we wanted something, if it was a good idea and they felt with a warm fuzzy feeling for the whole community, they were ponying down.
Oh, yeah.
Owens Corning, yeah,
So,
ice and beverage. I mean, you can go on and on and on,
but I think what you're saying is this limited resources, which is partly caused by this weakness, it makes it harder for you to do tourism and kind of develop traction and make some improvements to make that group. See, you got another.
Yeah, going back to the heavy mills, they would talk to the legislature and they'd list, we don't have the political horsepower we need to go through some of our small problems.
Oh. The lack of support in sales.
I'm not saying where I'm leaning for the governorship, but if there's a certain person who gets elected to the governorship, I think.
Somebody?
I think that, no, I'm not, but certainly that might,
So hold that, there could be an opportunity.
it could be an opportunity if,
Do we have any other weaknesses?
had to pass.
What are weaknesses we have? I heard somebody talk about permitting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, permitting, yes.
Permitting.
Even like for fireworks, we have to go through 2 different permits, one through the Coast Guard and another one, I think, through DSL. So before.
So have Homeland Security.
Yep, the permitting, and I put DSL and
Put all the numbers down you want. There's the Army Corps, the DSL, the DEQ. These.
that's good. All right, any others?
So one of the things that weakness is that in the past, we haven't had a very good relationship with our destination marketing organization in Columbia County. It's been almost completely ineffective because we're part of the Portland region and they have not given us any traction whatsoever. But in the more recent years with Columbia County Economic Team taking on the Columbia County role of that DMO, we're starting to have that conduit to travel Oregon, to travel Portland. So it's been a weakness. It's also an opportunity that's developing. They're starting to produce some grants, and it's I see that the relationship with Columbia Economic Team as being a strength.
Okay.
And
You wanna put that
not
down?
having it as a weakness. It needs to be.
Proceed,
You're on the green, you mean the strength or just?
That's a strength, yeah.
Yes, on the green one, yeah.
That's a strength too.
I was just thinking,
He said.
another big, strength that we didn't capture, I think, is not in the city, but it's a huge asset is Capital's Bay.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's,
A lot of proximity to it, you know.
yeah, so maybe put Capital's Bay there as a real strength. I mean, that place is, you know, the.
I mean,
Booth lodge, because
If we're going there, we're not fishing, period,
Yeah,
you know?
well, you got river sports.
Lots of river
You wanna go
sports.
fishing, you go fishing. You wanna go fishing.
No, man, I'm good.
Go kayak at night if you want to see a lot of wildlife.
Do we wanna get that specific? I mean, it's probably a big deal, right?
More non-motorized vessels in this state than there are
I
motorized.
think if you go with river sports, you kind of capture it. That kind of captures fishing.
Yeah.
That might be one of the biggest strengths you have. If you find it. Okay, any other weaknesses?
Parking.
Limited parking?
Limited parking, Matt, you got a pen? You put that down.
So the word capacity came up quite a bit, of limited capacity, whether it's financial or the resources, physical resources, the human resources.
Capacity? Are you talking about?
I mean, like with hotel rooms that came up with, just the lack of funding, it comes up, and that's indirectly or directly supports. They have staff to be able to do programs like this.
So limited staffing
I
capacity?
mean, myself as tourism
Yeah.
extra duty
Yes.
is
Okay.
capacity.
Yes. You got the evenings.
It's kind of weekend.
One of the problems we've had, and this is emotional, anytime something that needed to be done big in the past, the mills did it. And the community basically didn't get involved. And all of a sudden, the mills went away and the community doesn't know how to get involved.
You're talking about losing social capital.
Yeah, and also, we could have a fundraiser if the community had always been involved in it. But to a great extent, we've leaned on those big mills too hard for a very long time. And that's our grandparents and so on.
You want to put up here declining social capital?
Yes.
And what that means is less and less people are helping with community clubs, events. It's getting harder and harder. Part of that's because they're not working here, they're working somewhere else.
Right, and then again, our history, we didn't have to because the mills were so big and had so much extra money. Most of the mills were not owned by somebody here in the state of Oregon.
Right.
They had even less.
So having a large commuter population, is that a weakness? You think?
For community capital, yes, for people using restaurants, maybe.
No, I don't think it is, not for tourism, because it can actually be an asset, they can actually advertise for you. They go to work and they say, hey, you're from Halloween Town, what's it like?
You have that sign on the, send out a.
But I see that, but I think it might be in terms of, as we're talking about getting volunteers to step up and staff welcome booth and things like that, that can be a weakness because folks are busy commuting, and then their weekends, or their evening, they may have their kids involved in sports and things, but then, to then spend the weekend volunteering for the fourth, I think that can be a weakness. So it can also be a strength,
Yeah, so
you get out the word, but a weakness.
declining social capital, I think everybody agrees that, basically we're having, I mean, you used to have to raise these to put on the forest fund, kind of stuff. I mean, still got pretty good quantity, so.
What's our ratio typically a town where there's, we'll say a whole town, there were young kids, there were young parents, there were older parents, there was a workforce that was contiguous. Okay. How amputated are we from that type of thing? Because it used to be, you grew up here, you worked at the mill and so on, but all of a sudden the mill's left and there's this. We lost our skilled workers. And that's, those were the parents of the kids who were gonna come up and fill the jobs for us. How is that, where do you call that?
Well, I think that's this vacated industrial, losing your
Yeah.
industrial base. I think that's right on exactly what you're talking about.
Flip side of that, over on strengths, we have entrepreneurs starting new businesses all over the city.
Right. Well, I
We
think there should be people there.
I think that'll be a good one to fire off the opportunities too. I think it's both.
Exactly.
I think it's both.
Okay, so we know, we think it's a.
You got another good one he said right now. Did you write it down?
What was it?
Yeah, what did you say?
Partnerships
Oh, partnerships, yeah.
for opportunities, though.
Okay, so we're gonna start opportunities right now, so that, we'll put that one on first. This long.
He didn't even remember it.
So. Okay, so what opportunities do you have to really make a difference for tourism, to really, you've done all this work for, since '07, probably long before that. But there's a plan here of '07, you made a lot of nice.
I will say with, yeah,
What can you do now that's gonna make it?
well, I think this year more than ever, we're finally at a pendulum where the current E2C in charge has actually, we have funding for more opportunities that we've never had prior to. So really, I mean, and I would encourage them to do their job and come up with this, but the sky's the limit on opportunities. I mean, you could bring in showboats, speedboats, have races here. You could, I mean, yeah.
That's what we're getting at. So opportunities, you're thinking we could bring in more events? Is that what area is?
Yeah, they used to do speedboats down here. I don't know if you remember those drag boats that they used to bring down from the river. In tunnel boats, they were fast.
That gets at that issue that you were talking about, where there's 365 days a year have a different event. So you're saying more events?
I think one of the things that once the riverfront development kicks in, that we're going to have Spirit of Portland. We're going to have that boat was looking for dockage in the town. If there's development here and if there are things for people who get off that boat to do. Fine restaurants, a lot of walking activities because they've been pinned up on a boat and are on their way back to Portland from Astoria or whatever it is. So those kinds of opportunities are going to involve the Division of State Lands with dockage, the Marine Board, Fish and Game, all of those agencies that we should have a really strong strength with.
How do I put that in 4 words?
Develop strong ties.
I was thinking, really what you were saying is, where you started was, if we can develop this waterfront.
Yes.
So I think develop waterfront, isn't that?
First step.
If that happens, then the second thing you said is the track cruise ships.
The one thing I had a problem with him saying was, not if, I'm just thinking when, we developed that waterfront.
So we got to develop waterfront, and I think it attracts cruise ships.
Turned Astoria around. Once the cruise ships came, money started flowing in that city.
Okay. Well, yeah, funny you say that. I have a place in Seaside, and I owned it a long time. You know what turned that town around?
Kites.
No, it's when they developed that big, when they had that big Trend West.
Yeah.
All of a sudden that brought a lot of people in, and every one of these restaurants.
Brand new, fancy,
Right.
looking at that pool and say, I want to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah, got my taxes, but
kind of tongue in cheek about the kites, so that's an activity that develops.
That's a critical mass issue, right? That's, once you have that critical mass of things for people to do or want to come to see, then you're gonna have the true tourists folks want to stop, and if people want to come for
So,
a stay. you're gonna-
Another opportunity we have, which was in the partnerships, but it would be 2,400 acre watershed that, that Salmonberry Lake.
So develop.
AT off-road vehicles is what we're looking for. We're looking for motorcycle ready. We're working with Mr. Garrett on that, just so the council knows in case, you just keep it in the loop. It's before he was commissioner, we started working on this,
So develop 2,400 acre.
but not the whole acreage, but yes, development of,
Recreational site in that area.
Okay, develop watershed recreation site.
yes.
Okay. Like you said, they'll bring people down too, not necessarily the water.
Browns Camp's the only place you can go right now.
What other opportunities we have?
Location for a ferry crossing the river.
Okay, location for a ferry crossing the river. I've heard that. What other opportunities?
Sports and Rec, I think that there's a lot of untapped opportunity there for tourism with sports and rec programs.
Okay. So. Sporting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sporting tournament.
Sport event centers.
We can get those new ball fields built out there.
Three of them. Big tournaments.
Yeah.
So you are. Sporting tournaments.
There's definitely a lot more possibilities over on Sand Island. I mean, we had a sand building contest ETC did, and it
That
was
was
actually
amazing.
really successful. Yeah, it was amazing. It was a home run in its first year. Like, wow.
I heard discussion about. Owls and. What else can you have there to develop the river?
Not only in the riverfront, in other areas in town, accentuate bed and breakfast, utilize individuals' homes for those kinds of activities, entrepreneurs.
That's a very good point. We have proposed builder who'd like to build a hotel down here. I think that in itself is kind of tourism-ish in itself, because I talked to so many people that have drove through St. Helens, and I'm gonna take them out of my boat. They've been through here for 15 years in a row, right, going through the highway. They come down with this big smile on their face. They never knew this mile of town was even down here. And they're happy to get on the boat. I think a hotel, that is,
So secure riverfront hotel?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that's been a goal of your guys for some time.
Yeah.
You're still working with Tocola? Or somebody?
there's,
Yeah, I guess, yeah. And then you got your river walk, but that you were doing that, so, but that's gonna help with tourism too, of course. Other opportunities you have.
We put a 4-star restaurant on top of where Knob Hill is.
I love it.
Okay, put a
Right on top of Mount Hill Nature Park.
That's right. Once upon a time, that was the lookout area for the Native Americans, because we have the confluence of a number of rivers here. It's a good view of a couple of mountains.
I agree with Mr. Topaz in many senses, and one of my strong kind of pursuits is to get a high-rise parking lot against the cliff so that we have ingress and egress from Tualatin Street into that parking structure.
We'll put additional parking downtown
And I think we had that as something, yeah.
and a restaurant in the downtown.
A 4-star restaurant. This is the one you're gonna spend your $200 on, but you're coming out to St. Helens to that restaurant.
This is the one on top of a parking lot.
Okay.
Right. And Oregon City, you know that elevator that goes up and down?
Right.
That probably one of the strongest tourism kinds of issues that we could have if there's an elevator there of some sort, to see the entire city, all the mountains, the entire concept. Great idea for a parking structure, I think.
Okay,
I think another opportunity is the expansion of the Main Street program.
okay,
It's a big
that's a
opportunity.
good one. How about streetscape stuff, lighting? Your opportunity there, did that help?
Yes, and that's all part of our connector plan, so opportunity to bring, implement that. We've at least begun the preliminaries and have conceptual
So that'll be part of,
getting access from Highway 30 on down, which includes streetscaping and.
and so Main
Yes.
Street's probably gonna deal with streetscape, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if you want to put streetscape as a separate item or not.
Well, there's a beautification component to that, and there's also the functionality component where they want to look nice and be attractive and having the intersections function and not have traffic not be able to get at Gable Road or the, intersections at Plymouth in there that we've acquired properties there to build.
Traffic updates, traffic pattern updates, whatever,
Traffic,
Master plan updates for transportation.
Right.
traffic flow updates, is that whatever you're in there? For traffic master plan.
Master plan.
Yeah, it covers a lot. I like the master plan. It's,
Transportation system improvements really.
Yeah, continued
you
work.
can't get here from there.
So how old is your master plan?
7 years.
It's not
Come on,
bad.
its face.
No comment.
Many
The
years
good news
old.
now are all in full throttle now, ready to be executed. Pretty much all of them covers here.
So other opportunities, how about grant funds? A lot of money out there. You guys-
Definitely.
You know that you've done well with that money. You've done those for that money. But there's a lottery grant.
The federal government is pushing cleaning up the rivers. There's a whole bunch of places up and down the Multnomah Channel. They're redoing the Port of St. Helens. The Port of Portland, but to get into that mindset of having a lot of government money, really updating it. The other thing is, there's the big steam tug down in Portland. The city really doesn't like down there. Be nice if the stern wheel was out here, the big tourist attraction. But Portland is not really being kind to them. Be nice to suck up that as an opportunity to put that here.
So 4 words or less, what would you put here? How would you, 4 words?
Suggest strongly to bring what's it called, the Portland? It's the
Yeah.
tugboat thing.
Stern.
The stern wheel.
Yeah.
Pursue stern wheeler.
Yeah.
Now, how about one of the things that I've heard is capacity is an issue, so is there an opportunity to do something about that, or can you talk about that? We did know most of this stuff.
How about an opportunity of the, I know it's Portland, but Frog Ferry, that thing looks like it could be cool. If it goes as fast as they say it's going to. It'd be
Frog
cool.
Ferry?
Yeah,
Never heard of
you have it? Yeah, so it's gonna be Vancouver and Portland and travel up and down the river a little bit too. And it'll get you to your destinations, so it'll link you up to other transits. Yeah, and fast too.
Hydrofoil type boats.
it.
You can't fish.
There's something in the summertime that brings a lot of people in from the outside, and that's kind of an event called the Cruise In. And people with antique and classic cars like to come to town and kind of like go from uptown to downtown and pick a spot and kind of talk about the old days in the 60s and 70s and even further back.
Everybody else do that, don't they?
Dogs is that, and they're sponsoring that kind of now. But on the flip side of that, people like to come to our town and walk. And we've had a Parks Commission guy address the council, I think, probably 3 or 4 times about an urban trail. Urban trails being the nucleus for spokes of other trails to work from. And that's one of the things that I do when I go to another community. That's one of the things that he does when he goes to the other community. Well, I like to get out and walk and see what the town's all about, especially if it's a smaller town.
And
like
safe.
us. And so, and stay. Look, we found a bed and breakfast. Let's stay here. This is kind of cool. That actually happened in Port Angeles with my wife and I. So we started walking around the community and we thought, why take the ferry over to Victoria when we could stay here a night? And so those things happen. I know they do.
So highlight walking tours,
Walking tours and walking trails.
highlight walking tours, trails.
Exactly.
Slash tours. Somebody said something about bed and breakfast is trying to promote those, you know. You got that up there either. There's also B&B program.
Yes.
Should be on the list.
Yes.
Once upon a time, under Shedco, they had kind of a business listing. We had a business listing, which theoretically the chamber would do. You knew that there were 5 or 10 or 30 or 2 bed and breakfasts. We don't have a good list of that type of stuff. Now, we have wind, by the way, here. And if you're a sailboat enthusiast, you either drift up in Portland or come down to St. Helens and sail for racing. We've got good water as far as large amounts of distance between here and there.
Okay.
And we don't really, the Portland Yacht Club comes down here. We have our own little yacht club. We could host a lot more sailing events than we do.
I can speak from experience on that one as a past Commodore of a sailing group. We wanted to bring an international Cal 20 regatta here. And the only place to do it is not in Portland because there's enough wind. But the only place to do it was in Astoria, too far to go for that group. So they looked at St. Helens, and St. Helens has the best wind for sailing. So you're absolutely correct. And it has no resources, no hotels for the people who are coming from LA or coming across the border from Canada to participate. There would have been at least 100 or 120 individuals looking for places to sleep and places to eat and that kind of thing. Our last one was in Tacoma Yacht Club. And it's like, those things are big. They're huge and they last a good part of a week. So there is that, Steve, and as a good comment, and just from my experience of doing that, there's a need here. We could not rent a crane and put those boats in one or the other, although we pursued it, but then it came up, well, where's everyone going to stay? And that's it. So I like what Steve said.
Okay.
There's another group of yahoos that are something else. These guys are flying kites and they're putting people on boards underneath them. You can see them up and down the river on their hydrofoils. They're incredible.
Area.
I think this kind of goes along with the sporting.
It does.
It brings people.
Yeah, you need a prayer rug for those.
We got more events. We've got pictures.
Exactly.
All of that. We really need to kind of okay, so any other?
Sand Island was mentioned, but we didn't really go too deep with that, so.
beach watching on the sand island, just sitting on the beach watching big boats go by is a big thing for people from Kansas who've never seen a boat.
So we've kind of scratched the surface of what the opportunities, the possibilities are on kind of Sand Island as far as developing a relationship with the campground and people staying overnights. And the city gets a little bit of that business as well, but there's a limited capacity as far as having sort of opportunity really to do more out there, to have your
Right, like the
yurts or
cabins,
cabins or
yes, exactly.
running water or toilets and sewer and or.
Voters now are bringing their backpacks full of frisbees to play disc golf. And so what they have to do is get a ride over to the mainland, get up to McCormick Park. And I have it right on Sand Island. Those trails are wonderful for people to walk on. And they don't infiltrate the disc golfers. Everyone seems to be copacetic with that. I just got off of wanted to take a walk in the snow in McCormick Park. And took the dog and my wife. And guess who was there? I must have hit like 7 or 8 disc golfers playing in the snow, having fun, laughing, just enjoying the ambience of McCormick Park and an activity.
Can we go back to weaknesses, which Doug just mentioned? We don't have a taxi system around here to get off the docks to get up to say.
We have Uber. Everyone uses Uber or Lyft. He's like, what is that?
We're gonna say that I have options there. You have all these different events, but are they organized?
Some are, some aren't, so, yeah, I mean, everything that the 13 nights and the Sandcastle and Sand Island and all of them are advertised on Governor Columbia County.
Any other opportunities?
Rick, fishing. What's the fishing grounds like around here? Say, if we had a bunch of outfitters taking people out, the fishing in this part of the river, good or bad?
It's really good, and it's at a cutoff point, so that would be an opportunity, yeah, for sure. I mean,
The seals.
fishing events,
Seal hunting.
fishing events is what he's trying to say.
Okay, so we put that there, we're gonna move Sand Island over
For
here as well.
businesses.
'Cause I think we're about done with opportunities, right?
Mhm.
So why don't we talk about threats?
Hey, take Sand Island off top of that one, though, that's not correct.
Down.
What are the threats that are gonna make you guys not be able to reach your goals as far as trying to make this a vibrant tourism hub on the
Time.
time?
Time is a factor, a huge factor. We start talking about the opportunities of the waterfront. We developed a master waterfront plan, and from that master waterfront plan came a overlay of if Boise Cascade does not sell their property, it would be good that the city look at it. That was like 14 years ago, 13 years ago. So time it just doesn't happen like this. So it takes good planning, it takes community involvement, it takes so much. So I always get asked, hey, when's that going to happen? You know, when we put that concept of what could happen, it's like, when's that going to happen? When's that going to happen? And it's in a concept stage right now. It's in a planning stage right now. And so there is all of those things that time is a huge factor. A lot of people don't understand. It just takes a lot of time to do it.
So basically what you're saying is progress takes time,
Exactly.
so.
Economic constraints.
So economic constraints. We only have so much money.
Well, and I would say just international and national economics.
Pandemic,
We
you know.
don't have, well, I had pandemics, recessions and wildfires. A large number of things that are beyond our control, but have a devastating impact.
Safety, good.
What are the other?
Welfares.
What else is gonna make it hard for you guys?
We got a sewer plant that's gonna have to be redone. That's a $70 million hole right now that's coming. And it's gonna be the federal government that's gonna strap us into the wall on that one. But when it comes to money, if you have a good idea, there's money internationally, there are people with more money they know what to do with. We need a good advertising agent or somebody to go out and who has connections to bring people here.
So, Mark, you're talking about marketing, you need to do more marketing?
Yeah, and the state does not do any marketing. If you look at a lot of the executive facility magazines, the state of Oregon doesn't do a damn thing.
So a lack of marketing materials as well.
Yes.
I agree with that. That's kind of one of our problems with industrial development in this county. So, everybody knows where we are. What other threats do we, lack of marketing is gonna make it difficult to promote the events?
I don't know how we want to say the infrastructure, because I think, of course, we're going to develop this waterfront, but then what happens? Where are all those people going to be parking who are now parking down on the Boise Veneer property when they do come to town? So threat is like the transportation and infrastructure to get folks here without,
Well, won't this plan include parking?
Yeah. it
Well, there'll be
does.
parking.
There's a lot of parking.
there'll be parking, but I'm still thinking, I mean, is it gonna, but it also will have impact, like, we're not gonna be able to do the tailgating
Right.
on the 4th of July, or the tailgating on
There's gonna be a real question on parking here.
Christmas
If
ships.
you have, say, a big holiday weekend and all the relatives are coming to visit here, do we have enough parking to take on the relatives and a few tourists on the parking areas we have now?
Piggyback
So-
on that is with Pat is that I'm thinking the threats will happen 10 years from now. We've got to make plans for 10, 20 years from now. When that area has residents, when an area has businesses, and then add events, yeah, we're going to need parking.
And,
Underground.
and,
So,
yeah,
add-
and price.
Couldn't give up riverfront property though for parking, you know?
No,
I see that
no.
cliff.
We've got the
What you're saying,
parking area. I mean, there's some things we may have to give up.
well, and that's why you do a master plan of this whole thing, so if you take that into consideration, and when you build it, it's gonna be.
But as I say, the Nob Hill parking area is a great area that would look like a bowl for an outdoor amphitheater. It gets rid of your trees, but it's a great thing to put in.
Sure.
You're gonna have to make some choices. We can't have everything we want.
What other threats? What's not gonna people?
As far as personalities, I'll use just I'll use the tall ships in Newport that actually went away because people really pressured the city council. And they used to have this tall ship festival there. And what happened is people would not only stop, but they would slow down on 101. And it was frustrating to the citizens because they could not get onto 101 and go down the highway that they felt they should have for that, whatever it was, week or two event.
So would you call that anti-tourism sentiment?
Yeah. And they totally just threw it all away. Just said, okay, we're done with it. That was really, and they have a lot of hotels and, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe they don't, but.
And all the old fishermen have been there forever, and they all of a sudden had this
Yeah.
new port director come in that was trying to promote tourism, and
Yep.
there was an election, and 3 people got elected. And all it needed to send him out.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
One of the things, we have some football teams further down south in the state. And a lot of people go down there on I-5 and it's a traffic mess. I would large universities, when it comes to the big football games, that freeway going down there goes straight to the football game. I mean, they literally allocate where the driving is gonna be for that day. We don't have that flexibility within, ODOT seems to be at war with the rest of the state.
Right.
I mean, this is one of the things that a lot of states, alumni and football is a lot of money.
So the threat would be the inflexibility of ODOT. Okay?
Yeah.
That's a good one. Others?
I think an ongoing threat for tourism that will probably just never go away is that it's not an essential function of the city. So it's gonna be lower on a priority list as, you know, in terms of safety or development of housing, things like that. That's just gonna be a constant threat for tourism.
So,
Yeah,
low bike, I guess you say it's a low,
Just
lower.
non-essential,
priority.
when I'm thinking about it, people also think it's in our general budget too.
Yeah.
So I think a misconception of funding, where the funding actually comes from. It's a threat. No matter how we try to tell people about it, you'll read comments on Facebook constantly about,
Spend that money
yeah,
on
somewhere else.
roads.
There's a social comment that keeps coming. I want it to be like it was when I grew up here. Well, when you grew up here, there was financial income. But the people who have, I would say, a strong voice don't realize the things they used to enjoy was because somebody else was picking up the buck. The buck isn't here anymore, and they don't want to shift. So that's a social problem without realization that the money system, the economic system in this area has changed. And yet, the amount of power that group of people have, they've been here, is quite high.
Anything else is a threat? Economic constraints, pandemic, wildfires, lack of marketing, lack of parking, anti-tourism folks. ODOT, or priority city need. Lack of partnerships?
I will say yes, but to some extent that the city has acquired some of these events through people that used to be a nonprofit too. And had to grab a hold of it because they presented it to the city council like, hey, here you go. I don't know, that's kind of a weird one, maybe you're right,
Like,
maybe you're right, partnerships is a threat.
what I think of, when I think of partnership, I'm thinking about with other agencies, with, you know, with the state to try and get some of the state money in here. You guys doing that pretty good, but if you weren't including them, then that is, you might not leverage this.
Yeah, and I think
I agree.
John's CSAT concept, where, you know, with the county and Scappoose and us all being on board with CSAT is really strengthened that a lot.
Oh, it has, yeah. Oh, doing a good job.
Yeah.
And at this point, where we don't have a city-county partnership in terms of meeting monthly or quarterly, that went away. And so is that a threat? A huge one.
Not even just for tourism, all around.
Exactly.
Well, that kind of was part of it.
Could be.
I bet you that comes back.
Still a threat, right?
Well, absolutely.
I actually had to try to initiate that with Henry last year. We were set to go. We were gonna try doing it, and then COVID kind of spiked up again. And the old school wasn't quite ready because county really should start that off.
Do we, are there any other threats?
Kind of building on Counselor Chilton's prioritizing tourism, you know, if it is a lower priority, and tourism is part of an economic development strategy for the city, or for the county, for the state, really. And if that's not valued by the governing body, by the leadership, then that's a threat. I see that as a threat. You know, if we don't say that, yes, it's important, you know, we figured out funding wise.
Economic development, not a priority of the council.
If it's
Like if it's in council, I think it's, the city.
So let me ask you.
Yeah, it's all urban, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So, that's economic development, 'cause we have the grants that, I know John's involved with that. Is there any-
John, Jenny.
I don't think we have a specific,
You have
flow
economic
for-
Not-
development
Not, yeah.
Works on all the different components, grants.
So that's staffing.
that is an area for improvement or opportunity.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the organization called the master plan, which we really don't have. We say these words, but even the old one, we really don't have. So much of our income in some point in time will be tourism. 2%, 50%, 90%. So much will be local industry, the 5 and 6 man shops and restaurants. Then there'll be some bigger industries. What do we vision St. Helens being? If we put a bridge across the river right here, the ability to put large warehouses for trucking and stuff goes way up.
They blow up, yeah.
Again, we've got to look down the road and see how much of each economic sector can be here. I can like tourism all over the place, but it isn't going to support 100% of the town. There is a place in Florida and also in California that did that. It's called Disneyland. But that was its whole intent, was to do something like, we've got to see what our intent is, which we haven't done.
So, what I thought I heard was a lack of economic development staff capacity.
Yes.
Okay. That person could take away a lot of this stuff. Is there any other threats? Okay. Oh gosh, I think we've done it, now we can get there. You, little bit of doctor.
So I did do a handful of markers.
So each of you gets a different color. And what I want you to do is, come here and pick what you think are the 5 biggest strengths. Or the 5 biggest weaknesses. Opportunities
Our
and
top 5.
your top 5 each. And that will kind of get a sense of where,
Kind of mark
put a 1.
one line in front of it.
Yeah, just a 1, the number for the 1. You're welcome.
You give us no framework on what we're supposed to be trying to aim the city at, is what we want to get to.
Yeah.
Got used to you.
I know, I was just gonna tell you.
We'll go there after we're done with this and what.
Points, you know what I think the best one to provide someone to put is.
After with a drill space.
What color you got for me, Michael?
Oh.
Purple, that's one of my favorite colors.
When they order a ship, they pay cash. They give you the first rivet.
But the power, cash, maybe, that's money, man, that's someone with money.
There are people.
Oh, one, number.
Oh, I think.
And interesting, I was telling me. Ship most of that.
Put a mark afterwards.
Yeah, I don't think. I'm happy to sit down.
Get shipped. And their payment schedule is interesting because it's insured. Okay. Do you feel like you may lose a few dollars, Swiss having their hand in it?
Dark money, but it's guaranteed.
Yeah, that's the type of people that talk.
I agree. Question for you. So, as I come across this scenario, right? Some, like this one, it says journal entry. Classify expense, what does that mean? And why
So that
doesn't
means-
have a receipt like that?
That means I have it, I need to do an
No, I look at everything, everybody get out of the way.
Just charge it something or something.
I see, that's why.
That's when you see journal entry. Every time you see a journal entry, it's just.
Oh, really? Okay, and that's usually.
No, that's.
Cross my ear.
I just sent you that.
That's perfect. One more.
It's about.
The math. Keeps over here, grade your work.
Good grade.
I know it's already, it's slanting, so just got.
Maryland, Maryland.
Even Scott had to help me out with that.
Yeah, we went through a couple of things last summer and just, yeah, street life. Droplets, like, goes everywhere.
So, if you expand this amount. Yeah, it's like Excel, so.
Double click.
Like there.
My mouse.
75.
You wanna go ride your bike?
I've only got one. I've only got meetings.
That's completely fine. Mike, I thought that was like. You shouldn't. They have mistreated there.
Yeah. Send you the. Okay. So that, you expand all that stuff. Each line has.
Yes.
And it shows what amounts. So usually you can kind of spot those over time. You'll start to.
You'll get used to it. Yeah, I haven't, in the past, I haven't.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of trying to get in tune with their regular purchases and, you know, yeah, just to say it down. It's new for them as well. Okay.
Monterey.
Monterey.
Oh, but there's Portland one, then there's Monterey one.
It's a nice town. You ever been there? It's a great town. Eastwood hangs out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a bar there called the Hawkswood.
I don't go down to, I think it's Roseburg where Sam Elliott lives now. Who? Sam Elliott's got a place down Roseburg area.
He's in Brownsville.
Yes.
I watched that interview
Yes.
too.
Yeah, I go to Eugene area.
I started that, did you watch that, I started that new TV show?
No.
Oh, it's really good.
Last night.
Did you? My husband and I did too last night. It's pretty good.
1883.
It's the pre-story behind Yellowstone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Good.
Sam Elliott was in the Westland.
22 pounds.
It's in the Westland.
He's an Oregon native. Oh,
Who's that?
Sam Elliott?
Elliott must have.
Oh, okay, okay. I didn't know that. Brownville, that's where my son-in-law is from. That's where they did Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Yeah. With those old boys, you know.
Yeah, that was a good movie. I didn't know it was from June.
Yeah, Brownsville.
Saw that on the film trail. Over at Film Trail, people have kind of identified us for our films that have been here. The link, you can see where the films have come from.
That's cool.
There's ice boots right there. Those ducky boots are on the ice is a, you know, certain death.
Yeah, they're
horrible. They're nice.
I bought myself some good old fashioned galoshes.
Okay. I took a swim.
Thank you. Did you?
Fun with
stairs in Rainbow Park. That whole circuit for a while.
It happens so fast. I was really disappointed that, as cold as it's been, there are some ponds there at McCormick Park that freeze over. And I will go out and skate a little bit, but I haven't been able to skate because it didn't freeze over.
Even in those low 20s we had.
As of yesterday, they hadn't.
You know, I
And
thought-
then today it was so warm, so I'm hoping. But I always at least like once.
Better be careful out there. I don't want to hear about you falling into the pond.
Well, actually, they're only. They're only so deep, and one of the spots is actually on the disc golf course. Down on
On the back end.
that back end there, that with floods.
Yeah.
We've been dinner tonight, I guess.
You know, Pat,
No.
back in Boston, people would put a plastic liner down in their backyards in the end of October and fill it with water and be skating by November.
Yeah. Yeah.
The grass looked terrible when you took it up in April, but the kids were.
We had an ice storm here on Christmas
How late is that store open?
20-some years ago.
Really? 8?
And I just had a grand old time. I skated everywhere in this town. There wasn't a place that I couldn't skate on. It was just a gas. But I do, my wife shudders. And I'm sure if I take a spill.
Well, we had when we lived in Massachusetts, just behind our place was the irrigation pond for cranberry bogs. The town was down there. This old man, stocking cap about so long in a long coat, would put his hands behind his back and could outskate anybody. He was probably 80 years old.
I bet.
And but we had ice for a long period of time. It showed.
Yeah.
And there was always a pile of wood over there and a fire over there.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about it, but. And you use the restroom.
I'm sure we have time for this.
10 minutes.
No. We'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break, everybody. Everybody good with that? Sure. No?
10-minute break.
Ready.
Okay, why don't we take a look at this? We'll start with strengths. Biggest strength was everybody felt like the river was your biggest tourism opportunity. Halloween Town, your events, 13 nights. Businesses were a real opportunity and strength. Actually, if you have new business, restaurants, food, that's one of your 2 or 3 biggest strengths, and then of course your events. So out here, development opportunities was a strength, and it's Sand Island. So as far as weaknesses go, the biggest weakness identified was event communication with locals. So another one that was a big one was organizational work action plans. So kind of part of the same thing, communication and action plans. Another weakness was the vacated industrial properties, limited partnerships, and boats was a weakness, and another one was a lack of shared vision. Well, as far as opportunities, the biggest one was to develop the waterfront. Boy, you guys got that figured out. You know, you recognize that if you're going to develop like you'd like to, parking is going to be a big deal. You feel like Main Street's a big deal and a great opportunity to revitalize downtown. And you see it, building partnerships is a big opportunity. And also bringing more sports events to the area. And also continuing to pursue grant funds. But the big one again was developing the waterfront, Main Street, adding parking, and the biggest threat was the concern that tourism was not a priority need with the city, particularly with the public. Economic constraints, you know, you have a lot of good ideas and plans, but you're not sure how you're going to pay for it. So that's a real threat, and I think we found that out. And the third one that was equally was lack of economic development staff, somebody to help implement all this stuff. So, and then again, another threat was if we don't build partnerships, that could be a real challenge. Places for work were our opportunities. So we usually, at this point, what I think is really useful is to talk about, okay, so we've gone through this SWOT exercise. What are the strategic action items you think we should work on? Typically what happens is identify your strategic action priorities, and then you put together a plan for each one of them. Okay, so if you picked, for instance, an opportunity to develop waterfront, you already have an action plan for that, so that's kind of done. The Main Street program, you're developing an action plan for that. Yeah. And really what that is a roadmap saying this is the kind of what it's going to take, this is how much it's going to cost, this is what we're going to try to accomplish. These are the people who should be working on this, and it's just a plan. And then at the end of the year, you come back and you visit that plan and say, okay, this is where we're at. We've been able to accomplish this. We haven't been able to accomplish this for these reasons. And it's a really valuable tool. So just looking at strategic, are there any strategic?
I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking, you know, this resembles what we've got going on as a city. This is how important tourism is. It's what amazes me that some of those points that we're hitting on hit on our city as a whole too.
Right.
Yes. So that's how important tourism, that just strengthens for me how important tourism actually is to a community, especially our size. You know, we're number 40 on 241 incorporated cities that people need some things to do, and whether we call it tourism, sometimes local events, people need things to do.
Well, and I think one of the things I grasp from this is that you guys are all really on the same page. You all recognize tourism is important. But if you're gonna be successful, there's certain things that are challenges that you gotta address. I would say right here, a strategic action item, your lack of economic development staff, how are you gonna get this done? Who's gonna do it? And how are you gonna pay for it? That's a big question. And then another one would be, I'm not sure there's much you can do about this one here in Lower City. I mean, as long as you were the governing body, recognize that this is a priority, that's how you address that. And then parking, you know, when you have your plan for the waterfront, you're gonna take that into consideration. I think that's probably on your list. Well, as far as these other opportunities, develop waterfront plan, that's in the works, right? So that'll stay on it. You got a plan for that?
So on a threat on the parking part of things, something that, I mean, the city of Portland does parking meters, and I'm not trying to get money from our citizens, but it keeps from derelict vehicles also being parked where parking should be sometimes, you know, it just happens, and it's very frustrating. Our code enforcement constantly is doing everything they can. There's only limited amount of things you can do. I can see that being an opportunity.
That in the downtown tourism corridors or just everywhere?
Well, downtown, I think would be, you know, I don't know, they're looking to the future. It's something that we need to, the city need to think about.
You can always put a no parking from 2 to 6 in the morning.
Yeah, a parking management strategy is definitely in our future.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what we did for
That's one of the tools to.
we had no parking through the decks. We had to take the street sweeper through it. People solved that problem pretty nicely, actually. Yeah. People from parking for days.
Sure.
2 to 6 in the morning, you know.
Yep, we can get a lot done.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no parking.
See any other?
One of the things that is not in here is, and I'm gonna hit on parking right now. There's another big use of parking spots, and it's called the county. And if they come here and bring a lot of cars for court cases or whatever, we really haven't designed this waterfront for other people doing their thing next to us, involving us for parking places. And the cooperation of us and the county, not only for parking, but for going on, is really missing. What does the county want to do in this area? We're only looking at the city of St. Helens.
Right.
They're right across the street. All we have to do is go to one of their meetings, testify, and start talking to them.
Yeah.
That's all we need to do.
Yeah, but as they say, there should have been a mechanism in place 20 years ago for doing this, and it isn't.
In some places it is.
Yeah. Well,
And
never
in
trained.
places that are more visible, it isn't.
No, I think you were saying that you need to have parking downtown, and I imagine that would be part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's an important point, but the key is that it's gotta be comprehensive.
Sure, and it considers the county and its peak uses, it considers the residents we have that live in these buildings that don't have any parking, street parking, that.
So, yeah, I think it's back to,
Yeah.
this development down to the waterfront plan, which includes parking. So I think you address it through this one here. I think that's probably your biggest, but obviously is the highest priority. Main Street, voting that's number 2. I think you could tie this additional parking to that a little bit. You got sports tournaments and more events. So I think that maybe coming up with an action plan to take a look at events and determine if you really want to do others. I think that would be a good action item. Because you already have some nice events, and I think if you look over here, and that's communication with locals, organizational work plan, like, there's not as good a coordination with those events and with the coordination with the locals, and maybe that's a plan that you put together. And as part of that plan, you could also probably take a look at the, take a look at the events. And then,
Let's play with parking a minute. You gotta get cars in and out to get them to park. Now, that's the event. How many cars am I gonna count that I've gotta move? So parking now becomes traffic pattern too. And a lot of these things we're doing is a bump and a bump as compared to a tied together concern.
well, that's why I tried to tie the development of waterfront with the Main Street program. I think both of those really need to include a chapter or section about parking. So if we're gonna bring more people, how are we gonna get them there?
Yeah.
And I think that, it ties to really, this is your top priority. And then Main Street's your other, and both of those, I would be surprised if you don't have that component to be a part. It's an important part, as you mentioned.
And realize that there are other things in the area that are gonna soak up our parking places during these events.
Well, potentially.
Well, as I say, if the county's doing something,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. We have a tendency not to look at a big picture. We look at little pieces of it
Right.
and don't connect all the pieces together. I've got to get people in and out of 30 that are going to use those parking places. And if I've got 10,000 cars coming today, what's Route 30 going to look like?
Good point. That can be considered. So basically you got this one, this one. Yes, those are the three: develop the waterfront, Main Street. And then the other one, if you add more events and that's three. Those all kind of tell me that you need to have an event plan, an events plan and strategy. And one of the things that plan needs to really focus on is the communication with locals. Make sure they understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And also for each one of these events, there should be a plan that you guys have an opportunity to take a look at that tells you all the questions that you're going to be asked. We're coming to town.
How we plan to execute it.
You're going to execute it so that you don't price when the event comes up. Action plans are really a valuable tool. And then what you do is at the end of the year, the last section on an action plan is accomplishments. What did you accomplish? What worked? What didn't work? What do we need to change for next year?
Evaluation.
Yeah, and just do that every year, and then go through this process, this process every year, and then all of a sudden there's gonna be other new goals show up, and you just add those to your strategy. And as you evolve with your success, some of these other things and other opportunities will be. The other one I think that really just jumps out at me is partnerships. It's a weakness, it's an opportunity, it's a threat if we don't do it. And so, but I don't see it as a strength. And so I think we come up with a plan. How are we gonna build these partnerships, and who should those partnerships be with? There's a lot of stakeholders. I don't know if you've ever done a stakeholder analysis before. They're really fun because really what it is you do this circle and you figure out who are our stakeholders, who cares about what we do. And from that list, you can find out who might be the people that you go to for volunteerism, for financial support, for partnerships. And there's a lot of them out there. I mean, you just think about it. You got the port, you got the city, you got the PUD, huge part.
Exactly. Could you see a vision of Pier Dock and a sign above that Pier Dock saying Columbia River PUD Pier Dock?
See it in the back.
There's a group that should have something to say on all of these things, and we haven't included them. Both the emergency crews, the fire and the police. Now, and any of these things, they're gonna have a critical part that we really don't have a discussion with. How are they gonna handle whatever?
Right.
And in any of our action plans, we have to put those groups that have, say, final say, how do I get my ambulance there?
Well, one thing about an action plan is you should invite the people that you think are necessary in order for you to be successful in implementing that particular action item. And everyone's different.
Mhm.
I'll give you a copy of the form. I've been using the same one for a long, long time. I think you go through this I mean, to me, there's about 6 different items here that if you just.
I think the lack of economic development staff, not only for tourism, but for our waterfront as well, to be modest about the numbers and your ROI, your return on your investment, and what's going out, what's gonna be coming in, what's projected. That's how Independence sold their waterfront, and I think it also would work with tourism to let people know that, hey, not just taking somebody's word for it, actually having a professional staff that actually says, well, these are projected, what our projected numbers, and they're very modest, and we know they're correct.
That's what we had, I think, back at the test, Jeff King over in Forest Grove. I mean, honestly, he wrote the grants, he developed all of their, their whole downtown, he helped create the urban renewal district. The small businesses absolutely loved it because he'd help them find small grant monies, just so many things. So
You need to be definitely the right person for that job too, and that,
and so
We develop things like ad hoc committees for, programs or new development things, so I think implementing something like that for tourism would be a good start.
yeah. Well, tourism and, all the ways of economic development.
Yeah.
Because,
And investors. and-
yeah,
and
'Cause we're
people
gonna have
that
a-
Are invested in tourism.
sure.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you got about, like I said, you got about 6 things you just jump off there that I think that if you came up with plans that would help you move, maybe for the next year and help you kind of move your tourism agenda forward. I'd be glad to help put those together some future, John.
First partnership.
Yeah.
We work together on set and everything else. Remember when you hired him, I said, John, let me tell you about this now. He's done a good job. You guys, honestly, nice progress. It's kind of nice to see some of these restaurants that you've been able to attract. I mean, you're really going the right direction, so you just need to kind of refine your plans and just keep going forward. You got a lot to sell here.
We do, and that's why I'm like that lack of economic development staff, not only just for tourism, but mainly for the other bigger projects, and not that tourism isn't important, and that's one of the threats.
Well, it's part of.
Yes, that's one of the threats out there, is that we don't feel that tourism is important enough.
Economic development really is tourism.
Yeah.
Is economic development, the expansion and its retention. There's 3 things. And, anyway,
Questions for Mike? I just want to thank.
Okay, you run the power company down there. What's the power company see for the future of this end of the state? You probably have a better idea of what's happening.
well, I tell you what I see St. Helens being, let's get this right on the waterfront. That's gonna make it, that's good. It's just gonna ripple, it's gonna help every business in town because it's gonna, all of a sudden, the values are gonna go up. There's gonna be a little more pride in the city and your opportunities are gonna explode. And not only that, look at the housing that you've had there. You're already exploding as a housing development. And I don't see that changing. But I think honestly, the secret's for what you do over here. I think if you do it well, you do it right, St. Helens is gonna be as nice a community as there is.
Why not St. Helens, right?
Sure, you really.
I mean, I even went as far as when I met with the public executives of Next the renewable fuel is trying to go in. I'm like, hey, you guys need a corporate office, we're only about 45 minutes away.
Absolutely.
It's not looking at these new buildings, or, maybe you want to invest in a building. I don't know.
One of the things that we've been doing a little bit of is we've been putting a little bit of money into marketing. And we've been marketing this area with the hopes that, we can help you bring some companies.
What does the power company see as the biggest advantage from your point of view of this area?
Well, power rates, we have some of the lowest power rates in the, have to start
Water
there.
rates aren't bad, well, sewer,
So
not bad.
really good, good rates all the way around, but I think it's livability and quality of life. I mean, you guys are close to Portland, but you're not in Portland, thank God. But you have access to all the amenities, and the other advantage is we have some undeveloped land that, if developed properly, could really kind of help.
What kind of businesses do you see would be most beneficial here?
Ones that pay family wage jobs that are fairly clean.
Yeah, that's a good heading. What kind of, specifically, tool sharpening, highlighter cleaning?
Mike has been instrumental in years past in bringing in a lot of different companies, Armstrong, yes.
I recruited Michael Curry to Columbia County,
So,
US.
it's just, meeting those connections, and if you could foresee it and it would be the Oracle, we'd already have it here, right? I mean, honestly.
But it's a real changing world. If you look at the electric business, it's changing dramatically. It used to be that, forever we'd be able to get our power from Bonneville, and we probably will for the future, but some of the carbon legislation that's passed in Oregon and Washington, for instance, in Clark County, they have a natural gas cogen plant that they're having to ramp down maybe to about a third of its capacity because they have to meet a certain emission. So basically, a good chance that those kind of natural gas is a target, carbon folks.
We had a zero CO2 emissions operation here and was cut off.
So I think this would be
What's the possibility of something like that
I
coming
think
back?
this would be a great topic for our first city county dinner. But we're on tourism, and I want to thank Mike for
Thanks
his
for-
time. We are way over schedule, and not that this isn't important, I'm dedicated to taking the time for it. That game started 7 minutes ago. Saying I'm willing to stick it out. And
Happy holidays to all of you.
Thank you.
thank you, Mike.
See you again.
Yep.
Take care.
All right, that was very insightful, just looking at their numbers up there. So our next item is to review tourism staff recommendations, question and answer.
Yeah, that was the meeting itself, just.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're not too fatigued, but to go through some of the next stuff here, but the attorney Peter Hicks is on the line. He's going to tune in right here, and I'll kind of cue it up for him as far as what you're going to look at here as far as the revised personal services agreement. This is an agreement. We had three forms actually, and the red line form, which typically goes out with this, is just something that is really so almost illegible. There's so many edits on it. So you've got a copy of the clean, and then but we want to go through the clean and talk about what's in it, what's not in it. And really it focuses around the business model, and the business model being that we propose to you a range of options ranging from a continuum, basically from completely city managed approach where it's just city staff producing all these events, which we feel is problematic at a lot of levels, to basically selling it off to somebody else, letting them lease or use our assets or turn them over, and we just collect a royalty on it perhaps. The middle of that is close to what we're doing. And that's this, hiring a third-party contractor to use the city assets, use and develop the city assets, and then, pay them a fee. That's that's where we're at, kind of that. Just basically the status quo, trying to improve it, the way things work, meet city's expectations. And I'm not sure
Yep, there's Peter.
if Peter's on there, and if he wants, if you can sit down, check there, and probably take the reins and talk
Sure.
through it.
You guys hear me okay?
You're a little low.
Little low?
Yeah,
Not sure how much I can do with that one on my mic.
that's much better.
Better? Okay. Hey, everybody, you'll love this. Anthony Brown just threw interception, so hate to tell you that, Mr. Mayor. So let me kind of walk through what we've done with this personal service agreement and talk about kind of the difference between independent contractor and employee from just a legal standpoint. So most of the time when you're looking for an independent contractor or a third party, you're looking for somebody that's going to come in and provide a specialty that you don't otherwise have. And oftentimes when we're talking about doing it for cities, it is definitely a niche type of specialty where it would frankly cost you guys too much or be cost prohibitive to bring in an employee and then manage that entire operation. So what you're looking at here is to bring somebody with that expertise to be able to put on the events. And that looks like what you guys have been doing kind of throughout this process with this contractor. The key is with any independent contractor is that you are not exercising significant direction and control over that individual or that entity. So you essentially give them a project and you tell them, go and do it. Hire whomever you need, use whatever tools and equipment you need, staff it the way you need to. That's all baked into the fees that you are paying that contractor. But what the city needs to be very careful not to do is get too enmeshed in the events and in that process. So what we tried to do in this agreement is kind of draw some distinction. And what I did was I looked at some of the recommendations that the council had done when analyzing this and some of the things they wanted to see and blended that into some of the existing personal services terms you had in the initial agreement. The initial agreement was just too general. I think it makes a lot of sense to add some more checks and balances to this so that both the city and the contractor have periods of time or benchmarks where they can figure out how the process is going and, you know, kind of what dollars are spent, what revenues generated and where those things are coming from. So you guys can analyze what's going on. So that's what this contract is primarily intended to do. Okay. Any questions so far?
Can we get a clean copy as I go through this marked up thing that I've gotten? It's somewhat confusing at times. I'm sure after you've gone through it 87 times, you know exactly what you're looking at.
Yeah, and Councilor Topaz, you should have a clean copy. I don't think we provided you the red line. The
I got
red
red
line.
lines.
Clean copy, there's a clean copy on.
Until I get it on paper, it's not a clean copy.
Print it out.
Have the red line of the new contract.
Do you guys have the red
It's just
line?
got crossouts in.
Here, you
Put
can,
one up now, can
I
you?
have.
No, I need to read it, Rick. Don't get it. Don't waste your time now. I need to read it. And I need to read it, not just have it in my hand.
you need to read.
Getting this thing only a few hours before, it doesn't cut it.
So, Councilor Topaz, I don't think we're taking action on it.
I know, but to make real sense of it, I've got to have a real piece of paper in my hand and spend time on it.
So what do the rest of us do?
You can advise me. I mean,
To do that.
I need to just to go over it. It's, you know, some of the things I absolutely agree with. Some of the things I just don't understand yet. I need to go through it a couple of times.
Okay, Peter, go ahead.
Sure. So what we tried to do, and I'll kind of highlight some of the changes and some of the modifications that we added. What we did a lot of changes to were the payment and the expenses portions, which start on paragraph 5. And what we wanted to do in kind of looking at what the memo that the council had put together was kind of more accountability or more check-ins with what the expenses were, what the revenue generated was, and what some of those pieces were. So we've added a couple things about making sure that the contractor's markup can't exceed a maximum of 5% for handling and budgeting expenses, but that also that the contractor submits an expense budget X number of days or even months prior to an event for approval by the city. So to the extent you guys had kind of an open-ended agreement where the contractor just submitted expenses as time went on, we can look at having more of a framework where for each event and each discrete event, that the contractor submits that expense budget that the council then approves. As part of an independent contractor agreement, part of that kind of relationship is such that the contractor should be budgeting in a way that fits within their fee structure, so they don't have to come back to you and ask for more money. So what we put in here is that you will not be required to reimburse the contractor for any expenses exceeding that approved budget amount, and that those will be the sole responsibility for the contractor or of the contractor. In this situation, you've had this contractor in play, I think, for about 5 years, if I understand correctly. So the contractor should have a pretty good idea of what it costs to produce one of these events. So I don't think that's an unreasonable term to have at this point. And that's part of the stuff in paragraph 5.2.
And she was doing it longer, but with the actual contract, you're right, 5 years.
Yep. And what we did in the term is that we changed the term a little bit so that it is something, and you'll see farther down that this is something that either party can terminate at any point with appropriate notice. So you all can decide how much notice you want and how much notice you need to give. But I think before it had continual renewal periods that where they automatically renewed going into the next year. I'm just not a fan of automatic renewals because that requires somebody to take an affirmative action to cancel it. I would rather have it be one of those things where it cancels first if you don't do anything, rather than just kind of having these affirmative obligations. So in this situation, if you all find out that in this process it's not working, you guys have an easier way to pull the trigger. The contractor also has the right, though, to determine that it's just not working for the contractor, and they can go ahead and terminate. 5.3 talks about the contractor providing some additional records and being more explicit about detailing the work performed and the expenses incurred. That should be provided on a monthly basis, and that reflects the revenue and expenditures, with the exception, and I'm not sure why you guys had this in the before, but there was something about an exception for expenditures related to talent acquisition. But there needs to be enough detail, and what we've asked for is enough detail in there that you can specifically identify the specific source of the revenue and the nature of that expenditure. So you get kind of a little bit more detailed pieces to that stuff. So, and then
it had to do with privacy for actors, actresses, and people knowing dollar amounts. It's not anybody.
Got it.
That privacy type of thing for them. That's what that was all about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, and then, you know, there are other pieces that we added, which was 5.5, where there was some concern in the memo that maybe the contractor wasn't remitting the funds promptly, or that they were coming in cash or some other form. So we added 5.5 that talks about the conclusion of the event that the contractor remits all gross receipts generated to the city with an accounting within X number of hours or days. And the accounting again has to include a detail of the revenue received listed by source of revenue. And then that the contractor also has to provide the city administrator access to the ticketing accounts for tracking and verification purposes. I do think you need to be a little careful about how much access or involvement you have in websites, social media, ticketing, because remember, the contractor provides their own tools and equipment. That's part of what you're paying for in that contractor arrangement. So to the extent that you are maintaining those, or there was one reference into having some of those things maybe on the city server, I think you need to be careful about how you do that, because it crosses over into you controlling that somewhat. I also have a provision in there that talks about the contractor, to the extent possible, shall discourage the use of cash payments. That seemed to be a bit of an issue. And we talked about having a way in the contract in 5.5 to see if you could use the Square card reader that connects directly to the bank's or the city's bank accounts. So we can kind of remove that issue. Okay, and then a lot of the other stuff. So there's some other things in there where I add some additional independent contractor language just to beef it up a little bit. So that's what's added in the sections about independent contractor in paragraph 6. Document ownership in paragraph 7. The agreement previously just kind of covered document ownership and whether you guys had the right to those documents. We've also included what's called a work made for hire provision, that anything that's developed by the contractor for the city during the contract is the city's property. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that comes back to the city, and that the contractor will cooperate and make sure that that stuff becomes the property of the city. So any publicity materials, any publications, any promotional materials are the property of the city and will come back to the city. And then as you kind of go through it, what we've looked at is adding some pieces with respect to insurance, workers' compensation more clearly spelled out. And then section 13 is the section where I talked about termination of the agreement. And what we have added is that either party can terminate at any time without cause at their, and you shall have at their sole discretion by giving whatever notice we feel is appropriate in order to do that. I like to do that in my contracts simply because nobody is stuck. It's like an employment contract. It's at will. You guys can get out if you absolutely need to. For cause terminations, I think, just create a mess, because whether you terminate someone for cause is typically a question of fact. So it creates a huge issue that everybody gets to argue over whether it was reasonable and appropriate. So this really sets up to say that either party could just decide this deal isn't working out. The one caveat I'd add to that is making sure, though, that you guys have enough notice. So that if the contractor decides that she wants to terminate, that you guys have enough notice to bring someone else in, and that they can continue to perform while you're waiting to bring somebody in, and it doesn't hamstring one of the events that's coming up.
And vice versa, that they can recapture any expenses that they have incurred prior to for the event.
Yep. And what we've done is that we have it that the city shall pay the contractor for services rendered up to the date of the termination, but not after.
Yeah.
Okay. Other than that, there's a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo in there. So you guys can look at it, but those are kind of the key points. The other thing that you need to look to, though, is that the contract and some of the contractor's duties are going to be related to what's in the scope of work. Okay, so that's the other piece that it's very important that we make sure we pay attention to. And we've added some stuff in the scope of work to cover some of those concerns. So, and that's attachment A. And what that does, I want to make sure I got it open, is we've added some additional provisions to that to also kind of beef up some of the concerns that were identified in the memo. So what we've added are some things where we just kind of more clearly spell out what's going on, but we also add some things about what the contractor needs to do in terms of coordination with city staff and in terms of providing logistical support and logistical planning for any of the events. That was one of the things that was clearly identified. Again, I think you got to be careful about how much influence you have in that, but I think you want to have the right to go ahead and approve those logistical plans. And that's in the scope of work, that they're supposed to be submitted to you for approval X number of days or months prior to the event. And then you can talk about how you make it work. There is some stuff in the scope that talks about for large events that they'll be required to do additional things. We need to probably define what a large event means. Okay, so you want to take out any ambiguity in the agreement, but we want to figure out what large event actually means and talks about. Okay, so we probably ought to define that. But other than that, this places a little bit more of a burden in the scope of work on the contractor to do some actual logistical planning and have meetings with the city departments that are necessary, including administration, park and rec, and some of the other stuff that was identified. More than anything else, again, we want to allow this so that you guys know what's going on and you know what the event's going to look like, you know what the plan is for that event. And if the contractor doesn't meet that, you have some recourse to come back and say you didn't go through those processes. We've left most of the stuff in this agreement to your approval. And so the city has the right to approve each of these pieces. So to the extent you were concerned about these kind of events happening without a lot of oversight or management, that gives you the ability to go ahead and do that and grants you the right to approve how those things work. You have the right to do that independent contractor agreement. You can set the parameters for what you want the project to be, and they need to meet those parameters. How they do it is up to them, but you all have the right to set those parameters, and that's what we've tried to kind of emphasize in this agreement more. And then the other thing that I added at the end was there's a paragraph that we would like to kind of clean up a little. John and I talked about it. The last paragraph in the scope of work is kind of confusing, and it's a little all over the place, but I wanted to meet with you all first before we change it significantly. But one of the things we did want to do was I noticed in the memo, there were some concerns about when the contractor would maybe put some staff on and they weren't clearly identified as being staff of the contractor. I think that's really important. That's a good point, that you want to draw a clear delineation between the contractor staff and city staff. One of the advantages of having a contractor is that if they screw up, there's indemnification clauses in the agreement that they're then responsible for that, not the city. Okay, so we want to make that clear delineation as possible as much as we can. Okay, so I threw a bunch of stuff at y'all, and I know Councilor Topaz, you haven't had a chance to review it and go through it like you'd like to, but do y'all have, do y'all have any questions?
Yes, I do. So we're unique in the fact that Halloween Town actually affects our building and the county building. We have an IGA as a city with the county. Very easy to do that. You have a third party try to enter into an agreement with the county. We do utilize our city staff to put things on our building and on the county building.
Yep.
In the future, I can see that's really the only way that this gets done safely and respectfully in between two government agencies that share a courtyard and this whole area. But I hear you saying that's an issue.
Not necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily. So you can use your staff for parts of it, and you can even have situations where, as long as you want to in the agreement, that the contractor can direct what your staff is potentially doing. I just think you need to have it clear in the agreement that when the contractor does that, the contractor is taking responsibility for those actions. Okay, and that's kind of the key, and that's what we've tried to draw out. So if the contractor is using your employees for some things or your staff because you need to as a result of those agreements, I think you can clarify that and make it so that it's going to work out okay. It's really a situation when you look at independent contractor agreements, and these are hard because the staffing is so variable that they have to staff up quickly for the event. It's not like she's going to have 4 or 5 people on this for the entire term. So it is a little harder to do that, but you can do that if you've got to pull in city staff for some of that stuff. The city staff is likely still going to be within the course and scope of their employment with the city while that goes on, but the contractor can go ahead and have the right to go ahead and direct and control some of those pieces.
Okay. Other questions for Peter?
That was easy, you guys.
That was really easy.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, thanks.
Yep, y'all welcome.
Don't
Thank
tell
you,
me
guys.
more about the duck game.
Not gonna. All right, y'all. Thank you.
Have a happy new year.
You too. Bye-bye.
So this is in no way its final form.
Yeah, I heard him say we had to.
There are some pieces that are definitely missing. Self-assessment about, we're taking on a lot of duties here as far as on the city side, as far as tracking and receiving, and there's a person task built into this that we're probably for the next contract, of course. But we can work on it and bring it back to you soon. As soon as the next meeting.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that needed to be shored up that were.
The need for having a financial guru on some of these projects shows up on a number of other projects too.
Well, I think there's an audit that we can just ask for from.
Yeah.
From the way the contract reads. We don't need it.
But as I say, the mechanism of running a lot of this stuff, is soaking up personnel
Yeah, so we're
on this as well as the other thing.
we're not involved in that, is what he said. If you
I know.
If you heard him, he said, we're not involved in that. We can ask for it.
No, I'm talking about us double checking what they're doing. It's gonna take some, just like we were talking about in threats and stuff like that, needing a specialty person on our staff to watch.
It should be easier if it's electronic and the city can just go in and.
All that other stuff, yeah.
Should be no problem. It shouldn't be.
Okay, so next steps moving forward, we have a contract that's to expire December 31st, although it does have automatic renews, and there's this other provision that seems to kind of conflict itself. So I think I feel the council's energy for not renewing the contract and working on a new contract that embraces some of these principles.
Correct.
That I guess your options there are,
After we have a new contract, we can make that.
yeah, you can make the decision. I have to,
Yeah.
once you have something in hand that you're comfortable with,
That's
what we're gonna
correct.
do with it.
That's the entire basis of this meeting.
Yes.
Yep.
And I understand the current contract wasn't signed until, I'm not suggesting we go till, wasn't signed until like March or April. It was made retroactive to January of that year.
Yeah, that was.
So I think, we're not hard and fast on it, obviously December 31st. So I'd like to get it done as soon as we can, but I'm not concerned that we're not. December 31st.
Yeah. But I would like to also do a timely manner.
Yes.
If whenever we do decide
Let's get it.
to have a timely manner, just because.
Okay, so the other piece is if you wanted to have a year-end report now, or if you want to save it to another time and we get the other house.
And we'll do it at our council meeting. We'll give you this year-end report and then, yeah.
In which case, then the public hearing would be the next step without adjourning the meeting, so we come back and
Yep.
approve the resolution and go watch the game.
Okay.
Hold on, are we open to questions now? Is this a good time?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have some questions from the committee report that I'd like to just talk about a little bit. One of them is have a plan to repay the 30K or 27K as
So there's
recommended by
some
staff.
policy decisions about tourism fund owing past borrowings and funds and things like that. Is, you know, if we go back and I think I said earlier that sometimes, or most of the time, the single source of revenue for a tourism program is the tax, right? And it gets a tax, they either spend the tax or they give it to another organization to make investments. And that's just kind of gone. And as we've actually, through the building of this program over the years, and due to some of it because of the contractor's calendar year and our fiscal year being January 1 or July 1, that it goes negative because of it's spending for the next year. Then we pay those back, and it's over that time it's been, yes, it can be made whole, right? So it's that's a policy decision the council can make. We put it in there as a recommendation. It needs to be at least positive, right? Then there's some other things about, you know, having a minimum fund balance or reserve of sorts, which is probably a really good
I think
idea.
that's a good idea. Yeah.
And repaying funds that aren't tourism, like the community development fund is
Right.
a fund that we borrowed from, which we did definitely should be capitalized if possible.
So we are gonna repay that then? Or have a plan?
Yeah,
to
those
do
are all decisions that are,
Can be made.
they're policy decisions that are related to this, but not necessarily the contract. Guys. So,
But I like the contract that it puts safeguards in there where that doesn't happen again.
that? Okay, and then I have another question about also from the committee meeting recommendations. So one of the charts on here shows a positive negative cash flow chart. And I had a question about why the actual expenses for 21-22 were under $200,000 when the last 5 years, the actual expenses have been around 500K.
total of the last 5 years.
Well, like they were all about 500K and then the last one was 200K. So I'm curious about why there was such a huge shift in the actual expenses.
Well, it's only ramped up in the last fiscal year.
Could I-
The whole budget, yeah, I think
Could we let Matt maybe speak on it?
it's
Since
just
he-
the growth of the whole tourism budget is your question.
No, okay. So in the positive negative chart in here, positive negative cash flow chart. It shows the actual expenses for 21-22 under 200K, when the last 5 years, the actual expenses have been around 500K. So I'm curious about why the actual expenses went down so significantly for 21-22 compared to the previous 4 years when they've all been about the same.
not tracking Matt, are you following what she's asking or?
Yes, I believe so. The last year and a half, or last 2 years of our tourism program are when we have started to get revenue. And that ticket revenue has not been directly reported to the city, as well as the contractor has decided to make expenses for the tourism program from those revenues in her account. And so those expenses are not reported by the city. And that is why it's 200 as opposed to 500. So the expenses are not coming from the city. The contractor is directly paying those from her own account, which is where the ticket revenue goes. So this follows one of my other recommendations of having the ticket revenue go directly into the city so that we can report accurate revenue and expenses for the program.
So that issue is addressed in the new
current
contract.
contract.
And it appears that Peter Hicks made a suggestion to have all revenue reported directly to the city.
Okay.
There, I mean, big picture. Since, even in the pandemic, when we went to this ticket model and had limited attendance, that was our best year ever. And then even the year after that was even
Yeah,
better.
where we actually made money.
And
It
that,
just wasn't clear that it was tickets. It just, I mean, that's a
And that
huge
those-
amount of money to
the
be
ticket
different.
sit in a agency account, they're not cashed, mostly so the ease of refunding.
Mhm.
Because it's really difficult to refund, especially with cash payments. But what's in that ticket leap account, it's easier, I understand, that, you know, you can look at the receipt, track the number, push the credit, and it goes away. And otherwise, it's a whole bunch of, you know, people that, for the pandemic, there was people that we bought tickets, refunded tickets, quite a bit that were.
Well, I think electronic, just completely electronic. I was like, well, what, that's BS because cash is king. But you know what? If somebody handed me and said, can you swipe my card? I'll give you $50. Here you go. You know,
All the vendors deal in cash. Cash is gonna always be there, I think. It's usually difficult to not have some level of cash for.
Yes.
I mean, but yes, it's aspirationally, yes, it'd be better to have it all electronic.
Yeah.
That problem also occurs on the expense side, as I mentioned, that where the expenses that you will see in 21-22 budget are drastically smaller than previous years. Just like you're seeing at that 192, I think now it's about 200 or so. It's drastically smaller.
And that's just due to the lack of inability to track it.
Right, because the contractor has decided to make payments to vendors and services from her personal business account.
And then we're unable to track that since it's a personal.
Track.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
I also have a concern because there is an amount of about $315,000 that I have not accounted for as far as expenses. And I have requested from the contractor multiple times to have those expenses listed. That would be that difference between the 200 and 500. And I get to receive a report.
Oh, I thought that was all fixed up.
Yeah, go ahead, Tina.
So I'm just curious if you guys got the email yesterday, which shows exactly what you're talking about right now.
No, I didn't.
I'm not aware of that. I'm just going off what our finance director is saying.
Well, okay, so can I just tell you how this works right now? So the revenue to the city right now, I sent this all to you guys, but I guess you didn't.
So actually, I was wondering why I received an email from you.
Okay,
but
that's what
I
it is.
didn't find, and I couldn't find the
It
attachment.
was a forward,
It's
you
just-
accidentally forwarded John's attachments, not your own.
Well,
didn't
no,
see
I
it.
So I
mean, it
didn't-
wasn't an attachment, it was in the main body of the
There
email.
was nothing in the main body.
Yeah,
Okay, bizarre.
Yeah, I
Um,
forgot to follow up with that.
So essentially, the revenue from the ticket site was $923,000 and some odd, hundreds. So we wrote checks and gave the city $612,036.47. And then I listed the expenses that we paid out of the account because we had agreed that rather than having checks rushing back and forth during this time frame, that we would just pay it directly out of the ticket account. So all of the receipts, of course, we have, and this is all in an Excel report, which Matt requested, but I don't have a way to send him this information electronically because it's got confidential contracts in it with entertainment and vendors. So I can't just send this, these receipts, which I have the physical receipts, which I'm
Because you
happy.
yourself have made agreements with.
Exactly.
you
So it's like he asked for it,
City.
but I don't have a way to get it.
It's kind of like HIPAA kind of rule for CCMH in comparison.
How much is the entertainment cost?
So I have, the entertainment cost is $132,400.
That still leaves $170,000 unaccounted.
Yeah, so there's 9,793 in equipment, there's 83,000 in staff, there's 38,000 in product, there's 22,000 in props, there's 24,000 in advertising. And it adds up to $311,309.32. So that is so I just wrote this check, the final check to the city after paying all the bills for the end of the year this week, and that was an extra $178,000. So in the tourism account, there should be somewhere between, I'm guessing like $700,000 to $800,000. And this was the year that we knew we had to make a lot of money because we need to buy assets that are not cheap. We need to buy a tram, we need to buy things to move people to Sand Island quicker. We have all kinds of things that are not going to be a few hundred or a few $1,000s. They're going to be significant purchases. So the whole intent this year was to, make as much money as we possibly could so that we could fund for 2022 what we need to buy. And so it's my belief that you have, around 700 and some thousand in the tourism account at least.
So we can pay for fireworks if we decide to keep that in tourism.
Well,
That's what I hear.
and some of the items that the attorney just mentioned are kind of, clearly the committee didn't have any idea what we do. Because for instance, we always have staff only on all of our aprons and everything else. There's never a city logo. So that would just be one example of the, misinformation that you've been provided.
I want to go back to that because I'm sorry, but I don't feel confident that you provided enough information to show that deficit has been repaid.
Well, I wouldn't have that.
I think it should go to our finance director.
Absolutely.
So if he's saying that he doesn't have it, I'm sorry, that's a red flag for me.
Of course.
See it.
Of course. I can understand why you see that as a red flag because you're getting a lot of misinformation right now.
Were you provided an opportunity to meet with the committee members?
I'm an independent contractor. I think the attorney just explained really well why I would not be meeting with them.
So, and again, we're here to discuss the contract and it got way off topic.
Is there gonna be another opportunity for us to?
we're not.
I've asked twice now to
So-
discuss the committee report and I keep getting shut down.
So this is about
That
actually,
looks suspicious.
no, this is actually about the contract we're discussing today.
So are we gonna have another opportunity on an agenda coming up to discuss this report from the staff? Cause I've tried several times now to have a discussion about it.
So most of the
Okay,
recommendations
so
of the report
when we
are.
set this meeting, I thought, okay, but just so
Into the contract, but not the rest of the stuff. When are we gonna have a chance to discuss that?
I did not know that's what you thought this meeting was about. When we actually discussed this meeting and set the agenda for this was to actually iron out a contract that was valid and would hold up for us in the future. That was what this meeting was about.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying, when are we gonna have an opportunity to discuss this? That's what I wanna know.
So obviously,
I keep bringing it up because we're not discussing it.
well, I don't know what we're supposed to do off the cusp. What do you want, Matt? What do you
The
want?
item on the agenda says review tourism staff recommendation and Q&A session.
Because there's obviously something here that you really want. And so I'm just wondering, what is it that you want?
I don't think that's fair,
No, because that's
how
what.
about he wants
I need to know.
expenses,
I'm
we're
asking him,
doing him.
I'm
You
at,
heard him ask that.
Councilor Tilton, I'm just asking our financial director what he wants to do his job.
It is my recommendation that the city should do an audit of the last 2 years.
There you go.
Okay,
Will that cost?
It doesn't matter what it will
Nothing if
cost.
I know.
Hold it, that's a fair that's a fair question. If you don't answer it, I ask what it would cost.
If you bring in a third-party CPA firm, it will likely cost between $10,000 and $15,000. It is something that could be done in-house if the city council wishes to do that.
We're sitting on what, 700,000, and you're worried about 10?
yep. So,
Happy to like give all the receipts over, except the entertainment receipts that we have contracts with. It's really simple. We have every receipt. So we can give you envelopes with the receipts in them. You can compare and stare and add them up and you will see that they match every invoice.
If it's
I don't
that
have
easy,
any
why hasn't it been done yet?
Because I've never been requested it, ever.
Why are you
Tourism
not
committee has
requesting it?
made 3 requests to the contractor for this information and has failed to do.
Come on, you guys, this is why we have these problems. Why can't we just,
all right, so this is, this,
Work together.
I think there's actually some personalities going on here a little bit. I think it really needs to, we're trying to work out a next step moving forward here, okay? And I'm okay with whatever checks and balances and this ego and all this and everything else. And you're not giving me what I want, well, I can't give you what you want. We clearly do not want to see this go away. It's up here, it's on a threat right now. That's gonna threaten this, and that's why this meeting was proposed to be here, is to draw up this contract, because I've had just about enough of this. And it wasn't about audits and everything else, it was actually looking to the future and drawing up a contract. That's what this entire meeting was set for, was to have a contract for set out for a RFP in the future if we chose to do that. And that's what this meeting is about.
so I hear you saying,
now we're
Mr. Mayor, that
talking
you want
about-
to sweep this under the
I'm
rug.
not saying
Oh,
that.
That's what it sounds like.
Counselor Chilton, do not gaslight me. Please do not gaslight me, because that's exactly what you're doing.
We can sweep it
And I
under the
don't, and I
rug
do not
at your
appreciate it.
direction, Mr.
And I do
Mayor.
not appreciate it. What I said was this meeting was set for, was exact
We put
topic.
it behind us.
No, that's not exactly what I'm saying.
That is what you just
No,
said.
it's not. You're trying to gaslight me, and I don't appreciate it.
Oh,
really
does
don't.
it feel bad? You gotta be strong in this industry, isn't that what you told me?
Really. Okay, so go ahead, continue on with your questions.
My questions is, we need to do what Matt is proposing. Our finance director is asking us to do this. Why would we not do it? Does anyone have a reason why we would not do it?
Go ahead, everybody else.
If we trust our city staff,
I think
Why
what
would we
we've got to
not do
do is, one, we've got to hear that report.
excuse me?
What?
We've got to hear that report. We've got to get to Matt, that's more information. Then we can talk about some of the details that are needed in the contract. I think right now, until we get the report, what the committee saw, good, bad, or indifferent, what Matt has seen, good, bad, or indifferent, till we get everything on the table, we can't touch that contract because we don't want to put in it.
I agree, and I think that what we're doing with going forward, pardon me, with going forward is a good thing, and our contractor suggests that she has all the information for an audit, all of it. She's very positive about it. So I don't understand what the big problems are and what all the emotions about, when it was just before me that, hey, this sounds like it can work, and you're suggesting, I think, a good suggestion.
And the one thing that puts the nail in the coffin and closes down is the audit. The audit from an outside firm says, this is what I found. Whether we like it or not, it's on somebody else's head. That gets rid of a lot
I think an
of.
outside firm, a third party, that it's not public, it's a third party, absolutely agree with it, because then that protects us also.
Exactly.
And then they can look at the contracts.
Yeah.
But really what this meeting was about, and I will come back to it, and I'm not trying to challenge anybody, but really what this meeting was about was to sit down with our attorney amongst ourselves and figure out what do we want to see in a contract for the future of the city and its tourism program, okay? We were not having up here today be doing this discussion. That was not part of this meeting.
Well, Mayor, I think we've already had the discussion. I think we can move forward.
Counselor Berkeley.
I
do you have
wanted to
something
make,
say?
and Tina, I'm looking, I pulled up my email and the text is missing from the body, so somehow so I hadn't seen that, so somehow that's. Secondly, in terms of the revisions to the contract, the proposed revisions, I like what I saw. But I think it is imperative that before we move forward with a new contract, that we do have all of the questions answered.
Sure.
And if that means to do an audit so that we're clear, so that there's no question. Let's move ahead with that. I think as long as the current contract conditions have been met, then we could move ahead, but let's make sure that we've got what.
So to spend money, and I'm totally for it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jan.
Absolutely. No, like totally.
So.
I appreciate that.
Again, so what we're here for is to actually, does anybody have anything else pertaining to the contract, that they want to get out? We're not done yet, but that was the main thing about this meeting, was to sit down, hash it out, what needed to be discussed. Obviously, I think more than this contract is about the monies in the audit. Just me personally, and sitting here and me personally getting attacked for some reason that I'm not even affiliated with. And it feels very muddy and it could have been avoided. If somebody were to reach out to me, instead of we continue to personally attack one another in our meetings over this. And that's the entire reason why I wanted this meeting, because it was like, this needs to stop. It just needs to stop. Look at this beautiful waterfront here. We have that, and we know that tourism is important, but we also see it as a threat not being important enough. And obviously it is when it did almost $1 million worth of ticket sales. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty damn good. Excuse my language, but and we have opportunities for looking up there, opportunities list, waterfront redevelopment, sports tourism, whatever we decide, actually. It says more events up there.
Just for the record, item number 3 says review tourism staff recommendations Q&A session. So this was an opportunity, I believe, based off the agenda.
Yeah,
to
I guess-
address this.
I guess you're right.
And
so I will
also
apologize
talk
for
about
that.
the business models, which
Alright.
I was looking forward to discussing. Are we gonna discuss that?
I hope the attorneys were consolidated both of those things, trying to make, not the Q&A part of it, but the staff recommendations and the business models into his comments that he made in the draft agreement. And, what I heard is that we're going to not renew this agreement, an agreement that complies with the third party, the middle option as far as
The middle option and the business model, okay.
come back to you with something that you're acceptable with. At the same time, we're gonna work on an audit to clean up whatever, justify the financials, and everybody's satisfied with that, then you can make a decision on if you want to renew that contract or if you want to do something different.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Yeah, if there's you're right, it does say it on there. So if there's any other questions, I apologize for the question.
I'd rather not continue to bring it up, I just have concerns that I would like.
Me
to-
being mayor, and I know there's stuff going on with my staff and I wish I was in the loop, and I'm not, because it's really that concerning. I would appreciate that any one of my staff members feel free to approach me and say, I need this, and I did not hear that. I did not hear that. I heard kind of him hawing in a meeting, but I never was approached once. And we are a very small unit staff here. And I would appreciate it in the future.
Well, and
That's all.
I appreciate Tina's willingness to look at the audit and continue moving on. It's not an attack, it's just if we want to move on with a clean slate and, you know, make these changes, we gotta clean up everything, you know?
No problem.
That's my thought.
No, I know there's been a lot of shade thrown on it, so I welcome it.
Well, I want to just get off on a good foot and move on, and this is, I think, how we do that. So thank you for being willing, Tina.
Yes. Okay. So other questions, Patrick?
No.
Okay, Jessica?
Nope.
Doug?
No.
Lopez? No. Okay. Next steps in moving forward is we'll reevaluate and narrow down the few choices that we had on the contract.
Can I ask a question though? There's things that if you're going to move forward with whoever, it doesn't matter if it's me or somebody else. There's some things that you guys that we need to buy if we have the money for it, that is tough to find. And, you know, it's not gonna wait 3 months probably. You'll just lose the opportunity. We'll end up spending more money probably. Because like right now, we should be preparing for 13 nights on the river, believe it or not. So it's like, you know, if we don't have a contract, then clearly I cannot do those things that I need to do, that I would say we need to do this to move forward to keep this engine going. So what is the, you know, next step involved in that?
We're talking specifically about the tram.
That's one item.
Well, interesting enough, tonight I heard two comments, one from Steve and one from Pat regarding, and from Pat, the entire community, Holton and the waterfront getting together for economic prosperity with restaurants and business places. I can't think of anything better than what we have tried, what I've been involved in trying to do in the last 14 years is get some kind of transportation trolley back and forth. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. And then Steve made a comment about some kind of taxi system to get uptown. And so here were two comments tonight regarding a positive aspect about a trolley getting back and forth. I support that. I just think that I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea for tourism to foot the bill on that and cost the taxpayers not a dime. And our service-based communities can utilize it. The city can utilize it.
Yes.
As
So
long
we own it, our service-based. community
Exactly.
could use it.
So, yeah, so much so, being in Kiwanis and then past Rotary, yeah, totally. The only service group that I haven't been in is Lions. And those two service groups of Kiwanis and Rotary would be strongly endorsing this trolley. I'm sure if they were here tonight, they'd speak very highly of it. So I feel that it's a need, and so I think it's a good idea.
I like
Not
it.
that we have to vote on it tonight or
I like
anything,
it
but I
too,
just,
but I think we should allow her to purchase it for us, for the city,
If we
so
have the- I
my
mean,
understanding, I asked questions of Tina. My questions were, did you have somebody look at it? We're not buying a lemon. Yes, she has done the due diligence as far as, you want to speak a little bit on just that?
That's what I was gonna ask, is for more of a proposal, like where are the numbers at? How would it be ran? Who would drive it? Things like that. How would it be covered insurance wise? How often would it run? Is there a way that you could like construct an email or something so we can read it?
Yeah, but I mean, part of it is knowing that we have it, so that we can put the utilization message out there. Like, for instance, one of the things that I think would have been so cool during even like the Christmas timeframe would be to sponsor some people that are doing awesome lights and having somebody actually driving a tram around, picking people up, taking them to see the Christmas lights. You have a cup of cocoa, and it's like a whole experience. And we could do the same thing with Halloween. We could do the same thing during any of the parades that people want to get from downtown to uptown. We just know that we would have that, and it moves 121 people. That's why this is so hard to find. All the other trams that we found were like 16 people or 20 people. That is just not enough for the volume of people that we have during Halloween. We had to limit ticket sales. We had to limit them severely this year. And imagine if we didn't have to do that, where we could be. So part of it is tourism would pay for this 100%. And you know, I think it's like a no-brainer because it's not $200,000 or $300,000, it's $70,000. And I believe we have 700,000 or close to it. And so I want to spend 10% of the, 10% of that budget on something that I know we need. And if we don't, we have to limit tickets again. It's going to be like this whole process that just takes a lot of time and energy to manage.
To back up on Jessica's question, I think it's a pertinent one, is the ongoing expenses footed by tourism.
Of course.
The expense, the maintenance expenses, all of those, and the anticipated, and probably the anticipated expense on that. I don't know if you can get
I
back
think
to.
it would make money, not cost money.
Oh, I know, I realize that, but the anticipated expense on maintenance would be annually and possibly from the individuals or the municipality that you're purchasing that from, if they had any records of that, or if they have, or they could shed light on what the maintenance, annual maintenance
We
cost.
have the books on that, and it's totally been, it's 100% perfect right now. It's totally ready to go. It's newly painted. It's been actually by the Phoenix guy that has this at his shop is actually the person that does all the school buses for the whole Phoenix school district.
And again, I don't mean to interrupt, but again, to reiterate what Jessica was asking is that we know what an initial cost is. What's the anticipated annual expenses on that? And I think that she wants to know that. That's what I'm understanding.
Tires and the engine runs.
Right.
So
What would that be? Yeah, so just an estimate.
maybe $3,000 would be my guess.
Jessica's thing is she's wanted to see it on paper.
Yes, I
That's
would
one
see like a
on paper.
business proposal with a plan. That's what I would like to see. And that doesn't mean that I'm gonna say no. I'd just like to see it so I can make a good judgment call on it.
I mean, we didn't really, I know, but the problem is like, okay, I can put it on paper, but there's no guarantees in anything. It's like when we bought the taxi. We bought the taxi and that was it. We just bought it and.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little different because that's a display item and.
Sorry.
So we're heading forward, and I'm speaking for the entire council, we're heading forward to is actually, that's the only way you're gonna get stuff done from here on out. Peter even said it.
Yeah, but
That's what we're gonna require from here on out is,
And that could stop the contract between us and its tracks. So, I mean, there's that too,
Yes,
you guys.
that's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct.
Contract together and,
Absolutely right.
We
Either
take it or-
party can go boom.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just saying regardless if I'm here or anybody else is here, this is.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think, I mean, this is something she's been asking for a while. Has anybody reached out to try to get any more info on it? I mean, I know that we've heard about it 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I'm just saying that.
Well, I asked Tina for more information on it and I didn't.
I can give you I can give you what I have. I can't give you anything else.
Well, just maybe like a little bit of thought into it, like what are you projecting that it's going, how is it gonna work? How much money is gonna be made? How many tickets are gonna be sold for it? Things like that, just a little bit of a plan.
It's all part of Halloween money that's coming in. And you're in the black this year as we anticipated we would be. I mean, it's all about cash flow and having the device that you can increase your cash flow. So how much would that tram make? Well, if we don't have it, I can tell you, we probably won't make another 400,000 off it. Because I'm anticipating people not being able to buy tickets again. We lost so much revenue because we had to stop ticket sales. So
Until
it's
it's on
money we're
paper, it doesn't
losing,
mean
it's not
anything.
money we're making.
I
I'll
think,
tell you
I think the
that.
future of tourism, I think this would, I mean, I'm just thinking whether she's in charge or not. We're talking about parking and we brought this up, not her. And if we have to have parking away from here, because some of these events have been going on for years. 4th of July or whatever, let's say we had some vacant property out on port property or our industrial property. How are we gonna park them there and transport them down? This would be one of those type of ways of doing something like that. And also it's ours, so we can lend it out to
Rent it out.
we can lend it out or rent it out, whatever, to the chamber, to Main Street, to the Kiwanis, to whoever. It's ours. It's
Yeah,
not hers.
I think that sounds like a great plan. I
Still
just
gotta
wanna
be on
see
paper.
the report. I wanna see, you know what I mean? I wanna see that plan and that
Yeah,
thought put
yeah.
into it about how it could be used,
Yeah.
how we could make money off of it.
I think you're asking for something like a maintenance kind of, what are the costs? And if I was Tina and sitting in her shoes, I would simply put down a high expense and a low expense, the high and the low, and probably get it to you just in terms of an estimate, just in terms of her asking the municipality or the people that she's purchasing it from, what is the annual, put in your estimate, what's the annual expense? That's all is that all you need?
Yes, just wanna see it, yeah.
And then for you, just down on paper.
That's
right?
it.
Pull a printed colored flyer off of your website, get a letter from the guy, the mechanic, put your estimated cost, give it to us. I think you're probably right. It's about probably $3,000 a year for
Yeah.
oil changes and routine lube.
Yeah, because it's got new brakes and new tires,
Oh,
new
wow.
paint, and the engine runs great, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we were requesting. Have it for us by our meeting. Next Wednesday. Week.
2 days away.
All right.
I think that what I think we're asking for is that there has been past practice and we've gotten to the point where there's been lots of questions and wondering what's going on. So that's why we're looking for the contract, with more specificity. And so I think I'm in agreement with here, if we're making these purchases, whether it's, we can afford it or not. If we, as council members, are being approached by people in the community, like, what's this trolley thing about?
Yes.
Well, it's a good idea, this and that. If we don't have something that does look, okay, where are we storing it? What is the maintenance? What is the insurance? What's the liability? What's the plan for its use? If we need to have it, just as and not as conflict, just as we have for this project and for the street widening project, we expect our contractors to be providing detailed outcomes and associated expenses and detailed outcomes. And a plan like what's being addressed in the contract is knowing 3 months out. Okay, this is the plan for 13 nights. As we go with it, I think we're just asking to try to handle things the same as we would with any other contract.
So we're asking,
Yeah.
and we aren't then, we're just asking so that we know and we can get that information out. You're not asking so that you can micromanage this yourself? That's my question. Why, you're asking.
I'm not sure.
You're asking for, no.
Asking-
It's a fair question. Let me ask. You're asking so that you know that you can go to the people who are asking you questions, because that's what you brought up, and so that you can answer them. Is that correct? Or are you asking it so that the council can come back and micromanage it and say, hey, this is wrong. You should have done this, or you should have done that. So I'm finding it's two sides of a.
Counselor Morton, I was very explicit in saying being able to ask people's questions, not to micromanage. And if you want to know about the business models, I made it clear, I want us to go to 3. I want us to get out of this because of what is happening again now. We're going with a year of transition. I want us out. I just want us out of it. And so I am.
I'm not attacking you at all.
I'm shocked that I've never given any impression that my approach to being a counselor is micromanaging. But it is for transparency and accountability.
I'm glad you quantified that, and it gave you a good opportunity to quantify.
Okay, so this is what I didn't want to see happen, but can you get us a proposal on this tree?
Yes. You a 1 sheet or a 2 sheet or whatever I have.
Yeah, just your information, just your plan, okay, what you're, how it's gonna work.
We're gonna move forward with an audit also, just to get this all squared away, third party, okay, third party audit, be looking into that. Be looking into that, get that done for us. And hugely successful, obviously, with the Tina, I mean, that's a good job. You need to hear that because you never hear it. You hear everything that's going wrong. I wanted to first foremost thank you for what you have done for this city. You made that phone call and got Kimberly J. Brown out here. And have grown this thing into what it is, and people see it being successful, and then people start inquiring. And it's unfortunate that we're here right now, but in this area, but we're working through the details. I just wanted to say that because you don't hear that ever enough. I don't think I've ever said that to you personally.
Thank you.
Publicly, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate your efforts.
So I will get the tram stuff and then you can ride it around town.
Yes.
Put that in your proposal, too.
Yes.
The mayor has to drive it.
Hey, I want the whole council, if we get it before the Kiwanis parade, we're all gonna be on that sucker driving down the Kiwanis parade.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay, so now we have something, now we have to go into our public hearing, okay? We have a property to sell here.
I have a comment.
Go
I
ahead.
just want to comment on all the coaches, all the coaching that I've done in my past career. And coming up with championship teams, which started out to be something that didn't look like any kind of team at all. We are doing the good work tonight, and I appreciate it so much. Getting into, some people might say getting into each other's face. I don't. I think it is, I think it's, no, I think it's a good thing because it allows each of us to say what we're all about and what we're trying to do. And I just appreciate everyone.
And that we're passionate about it.
Well, look what happened. We had a great outcome tonight, I think.
Yeah. And I wanna, again, look at Mike Sykes. He decided to come down here and help us out. I mean, he's just a great guy. I mean, he did that just cause. That's Mike.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so now let's go, Kathy, we need to go into a public hearing before we go, we're not adjourning this one, but we're going to a public hearing. Right? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start
You're going to
recess.
recess this meeting.
Yep, I'm recessing right now, so let's go ahead and do that. Yep, I'm gonna do it. I hope the Ducks are doing all right. Not halftime yet though, because it only started at 6:15.
See, their halftime is just like what we went through. Every time, the coach gets up and starts to mix it up and get things out of people that they want to say. And I think that's really important for the health of a good.
I was thinking more like Survivor. I've been watching Survivor.
We aren't kicking anyone off.
It feels like it some nights, doesn't it?
We're going forward.
Yep, we are, no matter what.
So just know you're gonna spend half the money auditing that it costs for the tram. So do I get a tram and a half?
Okay.
Ready, Kathy? Okay, so we'll call this council public hearing to order. It's Wednesday, December 29th. The time is 7:30 PM. The hearing, public hearing is for the sale of the following city-owned property, tax account number 28878, map number 4N1W04 BA 01200, block 83, lot 4 and 5, St. Helens. It is 11,600 square foot located on South Penn. And I will now open it up for public comment.
So this is directly across from property I own.
Okay.
And I'm glad that your city administrator has pointed out that it seemed backwards, that you were first trying to sell the property before you actually had a public hearing. So I'm glad that you corrected that. But it still seems fishy to me that you already have a sale. So you should declare the property as available for sale as surplus and then allow people to actually bid or buy it rather than already have somebody already pre-designed to buy it. I think that's crappy, especially when it's property directly across from the house that I've owned since 1978. And so didn't even know it was available because guess what? It's not. You make this decision.
Well, actually, we did declare it surplus. This is another process that we have to go through, Brady. We actually did declare this surplus about 7 or 8 months ago.
Well, I didn't hear any notice about it. I just saw this one. And you would think that you would have emailed the people that are directly across from it if you were going to declare it. Well, I only saw this hearing and thought. And so
This is
then,
another clerical error that we actually missed along the way on one sell property that we and that's why we have declared the surplus. We had them appraised, then declared them as surplus property, picked a realtor to go with, and put them out on the market for a long time. They've been on the market for quite a while.
I have never heard about it. And in fact, I thought that's what the process tonight is, to declare it a surplus.
No, so then for clerical reasons through the state, we actually have to go through a public hearing even at the tail end of that process, even though we've done all that.
So again, it seems backwards, that you're declaring it
Doing it twice.
as public hearing. Well, then great, but then you already have it sold. So it doesn't seem that if you're doing it twice, then there should be no sale.
Well, I think I think what it's set up for, Brady, is if you think that we are actually doing it to a relative of mine or a relative of somebody in the city, and if you suspect that, then I guess that's what this hearing would be about, would be the final say in that. And
I
I
don't know
know
who it's being sold to.
I hear what you're saying.
I think the process is backwards.
So,
And today is the day that you finally make the resolution to sell the property and declare it surplus. You shouldn't already have a sales agreement. That's the part that bothers me.
and I get that, I totally get it, so. Appreciate
It was declared surplus
Yeah.
when we decided to list, the council decided to
three of them,
list the 3 properties for sale.
3 properties.
They've been for sale, and we've had offers on, this is the 3rd. Those 3, and then we go through the process of, now that we have a buyer and an offer, we're contemplating the sale of the property. It's a surplus and the sale, and they're different actions.
Brady is correct. There was no public announcements printed up in the Chronicle or any other place. And there was not a public hearing 5 days after it was published. The people did know they want to buy it before the process got started. There's a number of things that he's correct on. It shifted back and forth, and this is an attempt to try to clean up some of the processes that were left out. And our attorneys pointed this out, I think at the last council meeting, that there's a whole bunch of jumble we're trying to unjumble, and this is in the unjumble business.
Is this time sensitive?
Yeah, I didn't know you grew up in 10th Street.
Directly across from the property.
Yeah,
First
the old
house.
swamp,
Huh?
the old swamp, used to be a swamp.
Talk about the time
I
sensitive.
wanted to tell you, put a pump there probably in about 1980. You finally put a pump there, but yes, every year we would flood.
The time
Ask John about time sensitivity.
The time sensitivity, I understand, is that it's a developer or somebody that needs to have property purchased by the end of the year. That's why we've kind of rushed this. And then that's not really a rush. I mean, it's just going through the process, but it's a quick turn.
Yeah.
We're having a public hearing, and proposing to sell property for the sum of $55,000 to what's the name? Steinhoff. Resolution.
And if we don't adhere to that person's request of purchasing that property in a timely manner, if we do set this over and try to clear up anything that might be suspect, is that going to be problematic for the city? And is it going to be problematic? Sounds like it's going to be problematic for the buyer, but is it going to be problematic for the city?
I thought we were clear. I thought it was cleared up.
It
This
is-
was the.
It was cleared up.
Okay.
This is not suspect.
It is cleared up?
Yeah.
So this is the same property that the
Right.
Habitat.
Yes.
$10,000 for it.
Right.
And we had done some,
This actually hit the RLMLS. I mean, if you're advertising properties, it hit everything that it needed to be. We did declare it surplus property. We have done everything that actually you do with sell the property.
I have confidence in what you're saying.
Yes. Yep. Okay, so any other?
Garcia's here, if there's any testimony from her as far as that representing her project.
We went through this process.
Jen, can you lower your mask?
Sure, I'm sorry. We went through this process with the first offer on the 10th Street lots
Mhm.
and backtracked to the publications and everything that the city needed to do for the surplus property. And so that should have, I mean, that was agreed upon, or all the conditions were met, probably what, 2 months ago, John?
Yes,
Because we have the other.
yes, the other account.
On the other 10th
The other
Street
account.
lot,
That's right.
they've already signed a contract with a surveyor because we got past the council's approval on it.
That's right.
Like I said, a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
I want to say it was in October because
We've talked about this a number of times in a
yes,
number of meetings.
it's gone on for
Yes.
several months.
Yes, I know. I know.
It has been advertised on multiple listings. It's been taken to every site that you could possibly imagine for real estate. Plus, there has been a sign on the property since the day it was listed.
The ORS says though it's gotta be in the newspaper. The fact that people know about it, it's just been put in the newspaper. But it's back to this state process, follow the lumps in the road type of thing.
Right, but my understanding was that that was done on the 10th Street lots.
Yeah.
in
Surplus
October
property, yeah.
And approved by the.
Yeah, and anybody who had an interest was,
That's the.
our acting agent.
Right.
Okay. All right, so any other public comment, Matt, anything on Zoom? No? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this hearing then, not hearing any.
We got a hammer in it.
We'll be going into our council special session that we recessed here in a sec.
Okay.
That's for me, don't nobody tell me if they know otherwise. Choose not, tell me.
Does not.
Well,
It started at 6. Actually, when they say it starts at 6, it actually starts at
Peter
6.
say that they threw it in, well, through an interception right away. Yeah. But maybe we're hiring some stud coaches. Okay.
You just got rid of.
I know. Okay, so now we're back from our, and back into our special session. And resolution number 1946, a resolution of the city council of St. Helens, Oregon, declaring city-owned property at South 10th Street, tax ID 28878, lot 4, block 83, as surplus and authorizing sale of the property.
I make a motion that we follow resolution 1946.
Second,
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve resolution 1946. Treasurer Morton?
any discussion from anyone? Yes.
Okay, Counselor Topaz?
Yes.
Counselor Berkeley?
Aye.
Counselor Tippins?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay, resolution 1946 passed. You all have happy new year. This is important stuff. This was good stuff. We are team building, guys. You know, I mean, I know our personalities flare, but what we did tonight with Michael and up here,
We had
was
a good-
great. Because I see a lot of this right down here along the bottom, also coinciding with that. So
I think we had a good discussion amongst each other as well. Without hard feelings.
if anybody wants to do lunch, I'll even buy, for crying out loud. If you've got something concerning, give me a call, please.
What do I say? Go Ducks.
I'll even buy, I said.
I can't.
Oh, yeah.